Meeting call to order. Today is Monday, March 27th. It is now 6:05 PM. Town Council meeting over the West Warwick Civic Center 2024 budget. Who wants to start? Mark?
Just globally with Civic Center, wastewater, and the general fund, for the benefit of those that weren't here last Monday, I'll just give my opening remarks. This is the public workshop in which the town council starts the process of reviewing and vetting the proposed fiscal 2024 budget. Our department heads continue to be considerate of the town's fiscal constraints and the fluctuating status of our economy while drafting the requests that will support the continuation of their services expected by our community and provide for the upgrading of infrastructure necessary to offer those services safely and more efficiently. Again, I'd like to acknowledge the hard work of our finance director, Kristen Benoit, in producing the proposals and keeping us on a reasonable and conservative path. This proposal process has been affected by the uncertainty of a finalized state budget, national economy, inflation, and supply cost. How these all factor into our fiscal 24 revenue and expenditure planning is a work in progress. Key points of this proposed budget: the total budget increase as proposed is a little more than $4.3 million, inclusive of just under $1 million in municipal expenses, $2.9 million in school state aid pass-through appropriation, and a $500,000 increase to the school department appropriation. The levy increase is expected to be 2.54%, or a little more than $1.7 million. All negotiated contractual obligations for unionized staff and salary adjustments for non-union personnel are included in this budget. Capital expenditure requests total a little more than $200,000. You'll notice when we get to that section this evening that it was cut drastically to keep our total budget increase to a minimum amount. But we're also planning on continuing proposing the use of ARPA funds while it's available to us, and aggressively seeking federal, state, and private grants and aid. We fully transitioned to the employee retirement system of Rhode Island, and the rates have been provided to all pensionable salary types are within their respective departments instead of in general government as they have been in years past. A 3% decrease in our working rates has been applied as we prepare for our transition to the Rhode Island Interlocal Trust for Healthcare Management. An increase to workers' comp is due to additional billing received after the workers' comp audit. The fiscal 23 expense is expected to be just under about $447,000. The adjustment for fiscal 24 is only slightly higher due to our experience modification number decreasing again for favorable claims experience. Our tax collection rate remains the same at 96.8%. There is no planned use for fund balance in fiscal 24. As always, we look forward to collaborating with you all to craft a finalized product that will be in the best interest of our hardworking and deserving community.
Thank you, Mark. Any questions from the council for Mark? Who wants to start with the civic?
We'll defer to Lori on this one.
Is it the copy that's out there is the same one?
It is. I wasn't sure,
All
so I
right.
grabbed it, but it is the same.
All right, so
Yeah.
no, I'm good. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I want to first thank you for allowing me to go first and allowing the other department heads for allowing me to go first so that I can get to a family thing tonight. So, I would like to take a moment just to speak about the Civic Center and being set up as an enterprise fund, just so that everybody is clear. The West Warwick Civic Center was set up as an enterprise fund way before most of us were here tonight to have anything to say about what was going on. Being an enterprise fund means that the hope is for the facility to be able to self-support, to pay their expenses, and to run based off the rental revenues throughout the year. In this case, it would be the field house for the court rentals and the ice rink for the sheet time. In many ways, the enterprise fund is basically a guideline, it's a projection of where the daily facilities expenses and revenues may fall from the research from the past years. The Civic Center budget guideline, rentals, staffing, and the needs of the facility all go hand in hand on a daily operation to keep the enterprise fund operating properly. In my opinion, I feel that it is very important to clearly state that the Civic Center is not part of the town budget. The budget that the taxpayers vote on the all-day referendum, no tax dollars are being allocated to the Civic Center under the current financial state structure that it is. Only the town council members of West Warwick vote to agree or disagree with the budget guidelines that's brought to them through tonight's workshop and next week's public hearings. I'm very happy to say that larger events and tournaments have made their way back for the community to enjoy. So hopefully that means a little bit of COVID is past us and we can move back on to doing things. We have a broad variety of upcoming events this upcoming year that always can be found on the town website, so that if anyone's ever looking for something fun to do with their family and looking for an event, just go to the town's website and then you can find it there. The middle school and high school utilize the facility daily for gym class, and it's great to see that during gym class you can even go ice skating nowadays. There are also a lot of larger events which the whole school is able to be part of with having the facility so close to where they're at school. Many different sports teams, and one of my favorite is that we started a blood drive that we do together. So the school, the town, everyone can do it, and we've done, I believe, 4 of them so far, and every donation spot has been filled by having it at the Civic Center because everyone can come in there. The facility is utilized by every recreational team within the town. The police testing takes place there. There's fire training that does there. I mean, I truly believe the Civic Center is a gem within itself. So now I'll get to the numbers. A few years ago, we made some modifications through staffing and the structure. And in my opinion, it's a large factor to the facility being able to stay in the black in fiscal years FY21, FY22, and year-to-date FY23. Each of you have the guidelines, so I'll kind of try to go through them quickly. The first page is just the overall balance. The second page is the summary of what FY20 through FY24 is. The third and fourth page are the salary, benefits, and the schedule of each employee. The fifth page is the payroll, taxes. Sixth and seventh pages are medical and dental. The eighth page is life insurance. The ninth page is the retirement plan. The 10th page is supplies and expenses, in which I broke everything down so that you can see exactly what the facility uses and the needs of it. The 11th page is the major needs. It's an example of, broken glass or something mechanically breaks immediately would come out of that line item. The 12th page is the facility's liability insurance. 13th page is the utilities, which I broke down: the water, the sewer, the phone, the heat. 14th page is the wind turbines. The 15th page is equipment, this is something that may be possibly purchased through the facility. It would be probably purchased in FY24 in the 4th quarter, depending if the funding is there for it, if our rentals were enough to make sure that we could have that. The 16th page is concession in the ice rink and vending machine in the field house, just the supplies of that. 17th page is the summer camp counselors for the program. And the 18th page is supplies, the activities, and the trips for the program. In conclusion, as I stated before, I have an open door policy. If there's any questions of anything in the facility or anything that's going on in the facility, you can always feel free to call me, email me, text me. I'm extremely passionate about making sure the facility operates so that it's a positive experience for everyone that walks through the door, as well as financially, it's self-supporting itself and it's not a burden upon the town. My hopes is that everyone feels the same way. Did it not follow through with mine?
You added pages to the
Oh.
handout out there from
Okay.
what we got in our book.
Okay. Sorry. Sorry.
It's okay. It's just a further breakdown of the line items.
Yeah.
So,
I'm gonna reserve all my questions till next week.
Okay.
I had a very busy weekend. I went through it. I left my notes at home apparently, so like I just have to ask everybody, as I guess as a whole, because I'm still confused about the wind turbines. It's down as an expense of $155,000.
Debt service. It's so they have, what it is when we took the bond out for the wind turbines, which was 10 million, 18 million. Each department in each, so if the school has a piece of the pie, they gotta pay back. The Civic Center's gotta pay back. It was based off their utility bills prior to, going to wind turbines. Because right now, they don't see a electric bill per se, because the wind turbines offset. So somebody has to pay back the debt service. So they subdivided, years ago, they subdivided to each department, library, Civic Center, ice rink, so on and so forth. So that 155,000, which was actually just reduced a little bit, was
Right.
170. That's their responsibility to the debt service.
That's what I'm looking at.
Yeah,
Got it.
and
Okay.
you
So this
change,
wasn't like a program that was set up. It actually cost the town money to put them up. Got
So
it.
yeah, like 18 million, we have to pay it back, but I
Okay.
mean, we also have credits and revenue generating also. Where is that?
Well, that's all I've heard since I've been on here is the credits. That's all I've heard is the credits, and that's when getting credits, I was doing.
So if you go into the special revenue, and if you see the electric bills, it's fine, because I don't think the town is actually paying any electric. And we're getting a few $100,000 in credits based upon what I've seen. So it's been actually a success story so far, and
Somewhat, this is the first year I started divvying out the credits, giving the, different customers credit towards their kind of a proportion,
instead of us getting,
not a guarantee.
so
I don't
instead of
wanna
us getting all the credit you gave some to the schools, some to the sewer plant, some to the civic center. Okay, thank you.
any other questions for Lori?
I want to, it's not necessarily a question, but, when, going back when, a couple of years ago, when the union was in the Civic Center, and I know it was a nightmare. And it was, I know people worked really hard to make sure we got to a point where we didn't have to have that, because that was, financially, it was a nightmare, and I totally understand that. But I was under the impression that when that happened, and this is why I brought it up a little bit last meeting, was there'd be a plan to pay back, like a solid plan to pay back the money that was owed. So it's nothing your fault, you walked into it. I know when you started, it's kind of all those renovations were done, and the town, I look at it as more like a loan, loaned it to the Civic Center. But I'm looking at a solid plan to pay that back versus we only get this much in revenue this year, we'll just put that aside. I don't think, nothing else that I know of works like that. I know if I had an issue and I couldn't pay the town, so I didn't pay my sewer bill for a year. I know I'm gonna have to make a plan to pay that sewer bill back plus 12% interest. And that's just, it is what it is. So I think there needs to be put as an expense in the budget. And we need to have a vision going forward. Doesn't have to be done in 1 or 2 years. It might be 10, might be 12. But we're talking about a lot of money. And the money belongs to the people. So I know you mentioned last time, Kristen, it was like 760 something, and I know that changes. And that's why I asked for the numbers of revenue versus expenses since we took it over. I asked for that today. So I just like to see that in the budget for a plan. So I'm just gonna throw out a number. If it's 10 years and we owe 750,000, it's 75,000 as an expense. And that revenue is gonna have to be generated and raised. And according to this, it seems like you can do it. So
So the enterprise, the budget is really just an estimate. You can put it in there, but if they end up having a deficit, that's not going to happen. The way that it's repaying the town is that revenues exceed expenditures. It's an automatic reduction of the due to, due from. also a good chunk, as I explained last time we brought this up, is sitting in the energy fund. Those
Mhm.
credits are sitting in the energy fund. So it was, a discussion was had that maybe the energy fund would start making a transfer of 50,000 or something to the civic center to start reducing
Mhm.
that due to, that money belonged to the credits, to the debt that was, that
Right.
was,
And that
Hey.
came from the Civic Center, correct? The energy
the
fund.
credits
credits from the
were
energy
because
fund.
of the roof. Yep.
Okay,
and
so
the solar.
that makes perfect sense.
Yep. So putting a line item in the budget is really not going to, it's not going to make a difference. It's really not. You can put it there, but it's not necessarily
should.
going to happen. Also, the Civic Center is owned by the town. So.
But it's not in the town budget, though. It's a different
It
budget.
does, that's just fund accounting. The general fund is a fund on its own. It's accounting. So the town, if you looked at it, its fixed assets owns the Civic Center
right.
complex. So it's really, it's not that the Civic Center owes the town back, it's that the general fund helped to contribute to pay for the roof. And then that was the accounting that was done back then. But it's still, the town owns the Civic Center.
Right.
So I mean, I think the better idea would be to have the energy fund, maybe make a plan that the energy fund starts transferring maybe 50,000 or something a year back of the credits that it took in back in 2016. And that would help start whittling it away.
It
And
just
what-
needs to be some type of a concrete plan. I'm treating it like this is, I mean, I know what you're doing down there, but I'm also looking at the finances and the business of this. So I know there's salary that you put in for new positions too. Did I look at that?
So there's
the right-
one that just went to a 30-hour position. That's just so that if I wanted to go away for a weekend, like, what is it? Oh, page, salaries are. Where are- They're labeled general wages, and I added the one that looks like this in here. You don't have this one too? Yeah, fine.
Yes, I gave you one.
Part-time
Yeah.
team leader.
This isn't.
Yeah. The fourth page.
Third position down on the
Yeah.
fourth page, part-time team leader, 30 hours per week.
And that was just someone that, so I don't have to work that many hours. Take a day off here and there. And obviously the seasonal are the concession stand and whatnot. We didn't have it running for a few years because of COVID and whatnot. So we have that all back in place, and that there's people that can come to games now. So you need someone to collect the tickets, and I did put, just in case there was an increase at any point, I did use a 3.2% increase just in case it needed to be played in there. And I would just rather, it's something that I already know about versus being surprised by it.
I'm still a little confused with going back to the other conversation. We own the building, I get that. But we also own the school buildings. Sewer plant. All have the same sort of them.
Not with the school because they have their own accounting system, but with wastewater, everything runs through the do froms. Yep, and if wastewater started expending more than they were taking in, then they would have the same issue.
Which they did years ago. And anytime recent, but they've
No,
done
we
it.
use fund balance.
Yes.
And sewer is a little different as well, because sewer encompasses multiple communities where the
Little
civic
bit.
center is. I mean, because other communities aren't paying it. I mean, it's similar, but it's a little different.
Well, they still,
When they
they're
run
using the
deficits.
facility, so the facility
No, I understand.
upgrades are still their responsibility as well as our
No, I
responsibility.
know you're right, but when you're paying taxes for the sewer, it's not just West Warwick that are paying taxes for the sewer. The civic center is only, I mean, I understand where Jason's coming from, but it's like they're both our accountants, and one money's going, one
Well,
is
just
going.
remember, we only collect taxes for West Warwick. We bill Coventry one flat rate. We bill East Greenwich a flat rate,
That's it.
and they tax their residents, and they pay
I
us.
get-
What
yeah.
they even can change the rates, I think they have.
Yeah.
If they, what we bill them, they might still make a little money on it.
I'm just saying, there is a little difference between the sewer and the civic center. But I know,
No, running financially, no, there is no difference. If they run a deficit, we have to cover that deficit.
Right, but then they have to pay us back. That's
But
the
again,
point.
it's a due to, due from, like she said. There's no payback plan. There's a, if following year, they get a couple $100,000 surplus, then they pay back the town. This, in the sewer department, not.
Well, they don't pay it back. It
They
reduces
pay-
their
it-
due
due
to
from
the
cha-
town.
changes.
I
It's
get
a
it, but it's still a
pooled
payback,
cash.
but it's still a payback. Even though
It's the
town
same thing the
building-
civic center does.
Right, but I'm just saying, it's still a payback. It's not like, it's not the civic center's responsibility to pay the money back. It is. Just like it would be the wastewater, treatment plant. If they had something they went over, it would be their responsibility. Or like we talked about with the school, the budget, maybe we should be doing the upgrades to the buildings and not forcing them to scurry money away all the time, trying to build up enough money to do it. There are buildings, and I just don't, I really don't see a difference. It's still a
There's
deficit.
still a lot of accounting implications to that as well.
But there's still a deficit. That's the bottom line with the civic center at this point.
Well, their net position is positive. They have a positive net position.
Okay, the town right now has a positive net position, but we're $143 million in the hole.
For our pension
Overall,
liabilities, you mean?
yes.
Right, again,
So-
accounting
so
entries.
again,
Yeah.
It might look like we're in the black, but we're really not in the black. We're deep in the red.
Well, that would be if we had to pay all our pension obligations tomorrow.
Exactly, but it's still a deficit, right? Somebody
a-
could call and say, hey, we want some more money here. And we could have to scramble on that. And same thing, like, if we wanted to be jerks, say, hey, Civic Center, we want it now. I mean, we could do that. Obviously, we're not going to, but it's
But
still a
where would they
deficit.
get it?
But I know, where would we get the 143 million?
Well,
You know,
but the
But
point
my-
is, they have no, they don't have an ability to raise taxes or do it. They don't, their revenue is
I
their sole
understand-
source.
I completely understand that,
Okay.
but to say they're in the black, they're not in the black. They're in the red, just like the town's not in the black, we're in the red. If like, I don't have a mortgage anymore, thankfully, but when I had a mortgage, even though I made X amount of dollars and I can go on a vacation, I'm still in the red because I still owe money on that house. I still have a deficit in my overall budget. And that's the same thing with the Civic Center. There's still a deficit in the overall budget. Same thing with the town. There's still a deficit in our overall budget. Same thing with the federal government. We're trillions of dollars in debt with the federal government. And that's the big concern, is that these foreign countries that own us are gonna call in it the debt at some point, and it's the same thing. So the semantics of numbers, I hate it. I really hate, because numbers can be played with and finagled. But the bottom line is, there's a deficit. And I think what Councilman Chardy's trying to do is trying to help establish a plan to break that deficit, because it's still there. No matter which way you look at it, it's a
I
deficit.
think Kristen proposed a plan of taking out of the energy fund so many thousand per year.
Right.
To reduce it even further. So I mean, that's definitely a way to do it.
I get that. I'm
To
just
start
saying,
off.
I hate hearing that there's no deficit when there is. And I just like
we've cut
to
it.
clarify that.
How
That's
many
it.
years, how many years have you been in the black? Like, how many years in a row is this that we've continually been, it's been. been a row.
You have the numbers, if you wanna
Uh,
hear the numbers.
I don't need
or-
the exact numbers, but
we-
no,
we
we've
have-
been on, I'm just,
Yeah.
It's a good thing. I mean, you're in
Right.
the black.
Yeah.
There's no question.
Yeah.
but I still think there needs to be a step
I mean,
to pay a portion back to the town,
just
because you're in the black.
just so that you understand. So in FY '21, the Civic Center had $127,000. Last year, it had $175,000 at the end of the year. So that went to that.
To reduce that.
Right.
Correct.
I mean,
So-
right
so-
now,
So actually.
right now, when,
Yep.
as of 2/28/23, the wind tower plans paid for, all the bills paid for, everything's paid for. We haven't billed out for March, April, May, June, any of that. We're at $36,000 in the pot. I mean, if things continue to, I mean, again, I don't want to jinx us or. say anything, so
I mean,
We're
it's
just going
automatic.
the right
It is
way.
automatic
Let
every
me
year.
just throw this out
Your
there.
explanation to the last meeting, sorry, Dave, but your explanation at the last meeting was cleared that up to me a lot. I'm just saying when it's the wording of when it's not in the, they're in the black when they're really not. The bottom line is they're in the red. Fiscally, for that fiscal year, they may be in the black,
That
but
budget,
overall,
for
correct.
that
But
budget.
overall, they're in the red.
And I
And that's, I
understand,
just expressing that out loud, just to clarify it in my head.
I just
more
want to
than
point out a
anything.
couple of quick things. I understand what your plan, you want in the plan. I understand your plan. I just want to point out, if you go with a plan, let's just say $50,000 for the next 10 years, that's $500,000 reduction. Last year, she gave us $175,000. Personally, I'd agree to this, Lori, because if they say $50,000 and you got 175, then you could put that into the Civic Center right back in and say, I got 100.
No,
She's saying no because of due to whatever.
that's right.
But if you go to your accountant practice, skip yours for now, the legal one.
She's
and go
the
to
finance
your-
director. I'm gonna go with her.
I am too, but going to your process of giving $50,000 a year, we're just throwing that number out there. She's now got $125,000 surplus that she could take and put towards the Civic Center
Yes.
and do whatever.
Yes.
But that's not the practice that we have to practice here because the auditors are gonna question.
Well, you just, that does,
So,
that,
so at that point, we should use the number of 50. And I'm for that. That's kind of what I was proposing. Is you put 50 in, you make 100, you take 50, you know what you need down there. You fix it with that $50,000.
Doesn't work
But,
that way.
and that's fine.
yeah.
So if you take the 50 and put it in as an expense in the budget, you make an extra 50, then that can go to the energy account, correct?
No,
The energy would make a transfer
way.
in to, as an additional revenue source into the Civic Center, which would increase, hopefully their surplus at the end of the year, which would in turn reduce what what it owes the
it's still
town.
gonna come, yeah, it's still gonna come through the same way. If you bump that up by 50, if we did that last year or in 22, it would have been 225 that would have come through.
Right.
So
We do it, yeah,
you're
whenever.
sort of chasing your tail. I'm not sure that it's worth doing that. And I mean, I get it. We want to get that due from to zero. We'd like to move it
Let's
to the
go.
positive. To the positive. Again, it's not going to give her extra money to spend. It's just going to, that's further going to reduce that due from. Yeah, so I'm not sure.
But on the
The
flip
next person
side,
has to meet.
once that's gone, then all the extra revenue is there to.
Right, that's the next person after me.
So no, actually what happens is that due to from, it flips to the other way and they have money to spend, that yes, we could more easily say, yes, go ahead, why don't you have that capital expenditure, or why don't you do that?
I most spend it before it goes to the end of the year. Unfortunately.
Yep, that's the trap.
Any other questions for Lori? Thank you.
Thanks, Lori. You too. Enjoy your,
Family event.
whatever it is.
Tell
That's right.
Carl, tell Carl I said congratulations.
Say a prayer for me. Yeah.
Tell Carl I said congratulations.
It's like 7 feet tall now. I saw him the other day. Yeah.
Thanks, Lori.
8 inches of that is curls.
A bit of it is, I agree with you. Yeah, you see that on the basketball court going like this, yeah.
Night.
You notice how she just waved to all of you and said, ha-ha?
I'm sure she didn't mean that.
All right, I need a motion to adjourn this.
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
All in favor?
aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Sue will have its own agenda because I don't have
Yes.
that.
Mhm.
Copy of the agenda.
I'll get it.
Sure, post their own agendas. Yes, but all of our agendas tonight, yes, we're posted.
So that was posted? It wouldn't be on the town council.
Right, but the civic center, oh, no,
It's not on the-
that's why I didn't see it.
We don't have- It's on Secretary of
listed.
State's website.
It says civic
Listed.
center agenda,
Yeah, and the last one was last March. That's okay. As
April
long as it was on
22.
Civic Center. Yeah, it was.
We have one for- They only post one agenda a year.
Two probably, because they'll have to have a
Probably
public
for the-
hearing too.
Right.
All the way at the bottom. April
Might
20
just be archived and not active for new.
I can hit it, I can,
Oh, yep, West Warwick Civic Center. Got it.
it was online, I promise.
Nope, you're right. Our legal obligation is that it's on Secretary of
Correct.
State's website.
That's
and it
correct.
is. Should put there too, though.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Ready whenever you are.
Meeting call to order. Today is Monday, March 27th. It is now 6:35 PM. Fiscal year 24 budget workshop for sewer.
While Jeff takes his 2 steps to the podium, I'll just offer a couple opening comments. This is the first,
Hold on, we have prayer and pledge allegiance on a budget.
Yes. It's okay.
We want to waive it.
We're fine.
We want to waive the prayer and pledge allegiance. While we're on this,
Make a motion. to
hold on,
waive.
before, while we're on this, for the prayer, I say we take a moment of silence. For those who don't know, Frank Parenti Senior had passed. He served as a West Warwick firefighter for 42 years. And if anybody knows Frank, I don't think there's anybody in this town or in the history of West Warwick who adored and cherished the West Warwick Fire Department. So if we could just take a quick moment of silence. You might as well do the pledge, we're here. And our thoughts and prayers go out to the Parenti family. And as you know, Frank Jr. was also a longtime dedicated firefighter for West Warwick. Roll call. Sorry, you're gonna do it because Tony, I made Tony sit down there.
I don't have their agenda, but I can do roll call still.
Okay.
Councilman Latari,
Here.
Councilman Messier,
Here.
Councilman Bourget,
Here,
Council Vice President Williamson,
Here,
and Council President Osborne.
Here.
Or Mr. Blair.
And participating communities, Town of Coventry, Town of Situate, City of Cranston, City of Warwick, and Town of West Greenwich. Quorum is declared. Okay,
a-
well,
a
now we can
few-
start.
a few moment opening. This is the first budget prepared totally by our new administrative team. So to me, that's very exciting. I believe that they have been working tremendously together and have helped us take some giant steps forward. They've all been intimately involved in doing a comprehensive review on many different levels, including the budget, operational standards, long-term strategic planning, and most importantly, an item that gets forgotten or set aside many times when budgets are tight and we're not prepared to respond is the preventative maintenance. So I think they've made all of those a priority. The biggest one being fiscal responsibility, being good stewards of what our ratepayers are providing, specifically with capital projects, and dedicated to increasing our savings or reserves account to an appropriate level so we can be much more responsive and proactive instead of doing things after the fact. Turn it over to Jeff.
Hi, Jeff.
good evening, council.
Jeff.
This evening, the West Warwick Regional Treatment Facility will present our fiscal year 24 proposed budget. Let's get to the numbers. The FY 24 proposed budget request is $9,504,993, which is 1.2% higher than fiscal year 23's approved budget, but is also 1.1% lower than fiscal year 23's projected year-end budget. The facility has seen large increases in some of our big ticket items like sludge, chemicals, and line maintenance. While we have some line items going up, there are a few trending down, such as pension, longevity, electricity, safety clothing and shoes, and supplies and expenses. Fiscal year 23 was certainly a challenge with inflation and supply chain issues driving up the cost of living and doing business. I want to start by going over a positive aspect for the current fiscal year 23 budget. We're going to look at operational expenses. The facility is projected to end the fiscal year 7% over budget on overtime. A couple of contributing factors are retirements in the beginning of the fiscal year, requiring some overtime to cover the off-shift operator vacancy. There was an emergency 24-hour coverage New Year's weekend at Water Street, and a water pipe burst in our dewatering building on the coldest weekend of the year in February. And most recently, our operator position, well, we have one operator position becoming available or vacant. However, a savings we had this year was in the salary line item. This was in part to the vacant positions we had through the early retirement program, employees being out on medical leave, and other vacant positions throughout the year. We have had a savings of $41,677 through March 22nd. Based upon multiple line items under the personnel expenses umbrella, the facility is projected to come in, oh, sorry, hold on, getting old now. Guys, about 2 months, so
Yeah.
everyone's blurry up there.
Yeah.
All right. If it had not been for the Water Street breakage, the projected finishing the year 3% under budget on our total operational expenses. I want the council to understand that even with a rigid budget, the facility is trying to stay within our monetary parameters. Moving on to a concern for this facility is the various factors that affect our budget at a moment's notice, situations like Water Street. We need to ensure that our unrestricted funds, which is the balance with the town, AKA rainy day fund, savings account, whatever you want to call it, we need to make sure it stays in the black. Currently, we have approximately $2.4 million in this fund. After paying for the Water Street repair, we'll have approximately $1.8 million left. For a facility our size, we're reaching a dangerously low level in our savings account. Through various meetings, and after discussing various alternatives, we've come up with a way to help offset this decline in funds and be least burdensome on our ratepayers. The facility is asking for a one-time charge of $40 per equivalent dwelling unit, EDU, to replenish our unrestricted funds account for the Water Street expense. This would be a one-time debt service charge that would drop off the bill next fiscal year, pending another large incident like Water Street. So we are not going to ask for a rate increase this year. We are asking for a one-time $40 per EDU charge. As partners and as a community, we need to start thinking about the facility's long-term future. I want to set us up for success. The facility and the town need to start conversations about the facility being properly funded to handle our expenses while also getting our savings account built back up so we can begin addressing our aging infrastructure. We need to be proactive instead of an emergency reactive basis. Please understand, we want what's best for the facility, the town, and our regional partners. You know, I open the floor to comments, questions, concerns.
Any questions for Jeff?
$40 EDU. That's every community? Yes. And how many EDUs would that be? I think Tony has some stats on that. I used to be on the side, sorry.
Sorry about that, Councilman. It's approximately 16,200 EDUs. The final expense for Water Street, I should say the final expense, the expense for Water Street of 576,000 does not include final paving. We haven't gotten to that point yet because of the winter months. So we have to allow
for that final paving cost as well, but it's about 16,200, give or take. I could get you an exact number, Councilman. It's right around that ballpark.
And this last rate increase, how much was that per EDU, for lack of a better way of putting it,
For,
roughly?
was it-
On
the
average.
average user was, it was around $27 per EDU.
27?
For the year, yes.
So, I don't know, $40 is better.
So
I don't know how $40 would be better.
it's,
It's a one-time.
I get that, but it's
That-
one time this time until there's another major thing, so then it's one time again.
That's
you know.
another, and that's a real consideration. I mean, the infrastructure is aging.
Mhm.
So, and you guys will have to remind me, Water Street is about a $600,000 expense. And tell me the distance. I mean, so it's a very small,
Tony's
Yeah,
numbers,
for
you
the
don't know.
repair.
there was
distance.
about 300 feet.
so when you're looking at something from that area down to the,
Facilities.
how much, how many feet is that? Because the numbers, they astounded me. 4,500 feet.
2,500.
So it's
Right.
8 times.
And that's why a one time, I don't know.
Well, let me just bring up, I know last year, the $27 increase was to help bank account and help the deficit, making sure we don't, and we ran into this problem. So based off the budget being 3% under, as you were stating, without the Water Street, and you're asking for no rate increase without the $40, so without the $40 and no issues next year, am I correct by saying that you can run your budget and probably come in 3% lower without what you're doing now? See what I'm saying? Like, you just,
No,
so the numbers that were just thrown at me were, we would have been, through your speech was, if it wasn't for Water Street, you would have beat the budget by 3% lower. 3% of your overall budget is how much?
be around 290,000, Councilman.
So you'd be 200 and say, we'll just say you would have saved 290,000 this year, which is great. I think that's a great thing. You give us your monthly reports. And I know last year we kept talking about this increase. And we talked about, yeah, it's $27, but to a 2-family, to a Royal Mills, to whoever is per dwelling. And so when you're seeing multifamilies, 2, 3, 4, they're seeing $100 increases versus 27 as a single family, correct? So now you're asking for another $40 per dwelling. So now the landlord who has, and trust me, with next week's workshop, I know there'll be a couple of landlords who will be here
Yep.
because they're here every time. Now you're gonna ask their 4 and 8 families to give you $320 more as you hit them for a few $100 last year. So just pointing out, I mean, without that issue, you would have been 290 in richer per se in your budget. And now you're asking for 648,000 based off your numbers of 16,200 times 40.
Yes.
So, I mean, last year we went to the taxpayer, we said, and I know I had to defend it and I did defend it and I supported it, but
About what, $25 last year
it
or
was
something?
27
27,
times that,
13%.
so again, if you look at that 27 times 16, I'm gonna use 16,200 again. It's 437,000. So you asked the taxpayers last year to give you 437,000, and now you're asking the taxpayers now to give you another 600 as a one-time, but yet they're paying 437,000 extra over last year's budget. So, again, I have a tough time with the one-time. You want your savings account to grow, and I'm sure the taxpayers want their savings accounts to grow also. So-
I think the question becomes, and I think you guys have some information on costs of addressing our infrastructure, because we do need to do that. And I think I remember you guys talking about that being about a $7 million item if we were to take care of all of the infrastructure that we need to.
How much?
$7 million, somewhere in that neighborhood. And we
The-
don't,
I'm sorry, Councilman.
go ahead, no,
Councilman,
that's okay.
The long-term needs that need to get addressed, when we say long-term, the 5-year priority list for the facility, which are projects that for various reasons have just been moved down the road over the years. are going to cost almost $7 million over the next 5 years. And going to the council president, to your point about if we could come in that 3% under budget again next year, would also respectfully mention that we were able to spend $1.2 million in ARPA funds to get projects done last year, this current fiscal year. If ARPA wasn't available, it's money that potentially would have had to been expended out of the unrestricted balance, which would be depleted at this point. So it's something we're
Let's
not
make
trying to
that
keep.
clear Then, because his speech.
Yep.
Was, we would have been 3% under budget. He'd not say anything about the opera funds. So now the taxpayer needs to understand that there was available government funding that helped you get to 3%. And if you spent 1.2 and you're under 200,000 on your budget, you really overspent $1 million.
Correct.
So let's make that clear here.
You are correct, Council
And that's
President.
why I
Yes.
wanted to get to the 7 million 5-year plan and what we spent this year. We would have a zero fund and we would get to a due to, due from where they'd owe the town money. So something has to give somewhere, unfortunately.
But like you said, they would owe the town money. Going back to the other conversation, just putting that out there, they would owe the town.
Under the conversation that we had, that's correct.
Jeff,
That's right.
Tony, is there anywhere
You never get one.
in this budget that you can shave it off? I'm not talking like $3,000 or $4,000. I'm talking.
You're talking
some
significant savings.
significant money so we can put towards a project.
Honestly and respectfully, Councilman, I wish we could, but there isn't. With everything going up, we've seen it with sludge. And to give just a quick update on that point, we did ask Synagro to waive their CPI adjustment in July. They've declined due to the cost of doing business. So that's estimated. The CPI has been hovering around 7%.
And
So
that's
that
Senate-
is accounted for in next year's budget, but not to get off point, to answer your question, Councilman, no.
But-
There's
and-
no place that we
And
can significantly
Synagro,
go.
just because I'm aggravated with them, I guess,
Please.
you know, so yes, they refused to waive that, but they also didn't take our sludge for a good portion of the year, which cost us a lot of money to take it to the town landfills, the state landfill. So it's nice that they respectfully declined.
Respectfully declined. And the superintendent and I did it briefly, and I will say very briefly, discussed the possibility of just going to resource recovery to offload, but that, I'm sorry, I'm not looking at the budget, Council, I believe 748,000 for sludge removal next year would have to be up to about 980,000.
I know you're stuck with that. I mean, that's,
But
Not
again, I
right.
didn't mean to get off topic, but to
Doesn't-
answer your
it
question,
doesn't seem
unfortunately
right.
not.
It
doesn't,
No. Can I ask a question just based on some conversations that I did have with you guys that we talked about the numbers that we got from Kent County Water and concerned because those numbers went down. Were we able to figure that out?
The numbers provided by Kent County were accurate. They were accurate. We're continuing with this billing software upgrade. Vision was on site today to provide some training to the billing clerk. She has been unable to add or edit anything for the last 3.5 weeks due to various reasons with the software company, primarily to illness. I don't want to blame them for anything, primarily due to illness. So she will continue to look and edit and adjust. There could be some upward swing in the revenue, but there could be some downward depending on what she finds as she's going
So
along.
you're comfortable what they gave us was accurate, even though our first blush, and this was a long time ago, was that they actually had an increase in usage.
They did have an increase in usage, and my understanding from them is that the increase in usage was on irrigation systems. Was from folks doing a lot of outside watering over the summer due to the hot and dry summer. So that would not have transferred over to us,
Because it doesn't go into the sewer, yeah.
unfortunately.
David said earlier that we charge each community a flat rate. Did I hear that correctly?
For bond payments, yes, as far as usage, most residents, if they're tied into our system, get an individual bill from us, except Coventry, where we bill the town of Coventry one bill. They pay us and recoup it from their residents.
Okay, so it's just Coventry that's like that, because that's what I heard. They may even be making some money off of their billing
Correct. Their
process.
rate actually might be higher than us.
Right, all right.
No,
No,
nothing to do with us. no.
But I was gonna say, if that's the case, then maybe we should, I don't know if there's an avenue or a mechanism to increase what we charge Coventry. Well, I was gonna say all the communities, if all of them were doing it, because that's the way I understood it, to pull in a little bit more also. I don't know if
I think
that's.
we have an agreement in place, do we not? You're probably the only one that was around when it was
Sorry.
put in place.
Sorry
Yeah.
to interrupt, but the increased cost from Coventry is because they have to maintain their system. So it's not like you get, West Warwick charges them $1, they decided to charge you $1.10. They have a cost to maintain their collection system. So the problem was, before it was, West Warwick would send Coventry's bill to the Coventry resident, Coventry would send their bill, and they would pay one bill. And we had, the town of West Warwick had no means of getting their funding. So it was decided that we would take all of the wastewater flows, like you do any resident, take the total, multiply it by the unit charge per, whether it's an EDU charge. They don't pay capital because that's a separate dollar amount. But on the usage, all of whatever is in that usage bill gets reflected to them. So if it's, I'm just picking a number, $2 per 100 cubic feet, they get the same West Warwick charge. They will up it based on their expenses.
Okay.
Okay.
The way it was said, I was like, hey, if they're gonna make money off it.
Usually,
There you go.
you know, the intermunicipal agreement clearly states that, you know, whatever it costs, at one point, they tried to increase the outside, the non-West Warwick users, but they couldn't do that.
This proposed $40 that go to businesses also, or just residential?
Sorry. It would go to anybody, Councilman, anybody that's tied into the system.
Anybody's side. So a big business is gonna get $40 just as much as a small house.
Depending on the EDU or the units, correct, it would be, it's based on EDU. So if that particular business was just one EDU, they would get that $140 charge.
Explain that what EDU then.
I actually came with some numbers, Councilman, so I'll give it,
Okay.
better if I probably just did that, I apologize. Just to use, and I picked residential, so I apologize. Greenwich Place Apartments, they have 168 units. They would be billed $40 times 168 units. To give you a hard number, would be $6,720. Duplex, 2 units, they'd be charged $80. We looked at Royal Mills with 250 units, they'd get a $10,000 charge. And Briarwood Meadows with 552 units would get $22,080. Granted a Warwick property, but they're tied into our system.
So if somebody if you're a business, pick a business in your head, and they have 5 restrooms. Is it $40 just for the business, or is it $40 per restroom? That's what I'm talking about, a
No,
business.
right,
not-
right.
Not a place where people live, but a business, because I don't think it's fair that the residents, somebody who lives in a small house and is barely getting by, gets $40, and a business who's making money only pays $40.
Allegedly making money.
Depends on the
Yes,
business, a lot of them
exactly,
are,
yeah.
so. And I'm not, it's trying to clarify this in my
No,
head.
and I
which way the billing's
completely
gonna
understand,
go if
Councilman.
this is gonna happen.
The EDUs, I'm going to be honest, I am very horrible at explaining the EDU sometimes when it comes outside of residential. Are you? I apologize.
I'm sorry, I wrote it. So the equivalent dwelling unit is based upon a specific amount of volume or wastewater flow that a residential would give us. So we use the on-site wastewater treatment regulations, which says 115 gallons per bedroom. Usually it's 3 bedrooms. So it's 345 gallons. So anything, if you were a business that generated 400, 500 gallons per day, you would be charged to the EDUs. Okay, so it's an EDU is an equivalent dwelling unit. We equate the flow from a business, or because you can't, how do you do businesses? How do you do, high consumers of water volumes? So you want to make it fair so that a resident pays, that the businesses pay proportional if they were a resident.
And that's what I was making sure on,
Yes.
if this were to go through. So is that, all right, because like I said, if it was just, I took EDU as each individual unit, and obviously a business is a unit. So if they're only paying $40, that wouldn't be fair to a homeowner who's,
In the ordinance, it clearly defines an equivalent dwelling unit. So it's right in the ordinance.
okay.
So it's not something we make up. It's something, it's memorialized in the ordinance that you have. So we kind of standardize it based on DEM's regulations.
So if I have a 3-family, I have 3.
In a residential, if you have 3 family, in the ordinance as 3 EDUs, regardless of the flow. Okay, businesses
I differ.
then go through that equation process.
I guess as you helped write that ordinance
A little while ago.
last week, right?
Might seem like last week.
Everything seems like last.
One of the other questions that just came up, I didn't realize, I just took a call because I thought it was something from my father, but resident just called me about healthy benefits. And I'm not fully clear on what a healthy benefit is, but supposedly they've been calling the sewer department, to try to get it clarified what it is. And after a short conversation, is the healthy benefits also pay utilities? Well, the sewer is a utility, and they say West Warwick is not on the healthy benefit plan. So like they can go to Walmart and they have so much money to use. So I imagine this is probably just something that this resident reached out to me with, and she just sent me a screenshot. So like they have $100 to use by the end of the month in their healthy benefit, and they're trying to pay their sewer bill. And they're saying the town of West Warwick is not on the utility list, but Kent County Water is. So they're just, and
I'm unfamiliar with healthy benefits. Who actually,
it's from United, it's from United Healthcare,
oh,
healthy benefits. It's the first I've heard of it, but
I mean, if they'll let us on, why not? If they have money to spend, we'll take it, but.
We can look into that, Council President.
benefitsplus.com.
The other thing that we talked about doing is working with, and I apologize, I forget the name of the
West Bay
organization.
Community
but
Action.
West Bay
yes.
Community Action, their action, I'm sorry.
They're, Tony, I spoke to Tony about it. We're inviting them to that senior center
The
resource
27th,
fair
okay.
that day. So hopefully that'll take off a bit.
So people that have past due balances and or need help with their sewer, they actually can go and through them. And we're asking for West Bay to help us to sign people up for that. Because I think people, the number was incredibly low, number of people that actually were taking advantage of it.
The audit I had to do for DHS last month, I believe there was less than 18 households out of 900 and change that are eligible in town that are taking advantage of it. The governor has over the months changed the requirements. You don't need to be delinquent anymore as long as you qualify for LIHEAP. LIHEAP,
Yes, that's right.
the program will pay your sewer and water bill even if you're current. So it's a chance for folks to take advantage of a good program.
So not only does that help the taxpayer, but it also helps the sewer plant because we get
You
those
said
monies.
the same thing
because-
happened for the, I mean, you mentioned it when you brought it up, whenever it was in the winter, like for heating, right? And the same small number of people were utilizing for heating as well, right?
Heating,
That was one of the
it's-
things.
it's the heating, it's the same
Same
program
it's the
that
same program.
that got expanded.
Heating's always been, you didn't have to be delinquent, like you said,
Right.
sewer. So people, and that was one of the things, we brought this up last budget session, or the last time we went through this, was I got a couple of emails and calls, not many, it was less than 5, but said, just a reminder, you have to be delinquent. And if I'm not delinquent, I don't get the same help. So now that you say the governor's changed that, that's probably a plus for everybody who
Correct.
utilizes it. Unfortunately, only 18 out of the 900 homes are utilizing it. So we need to get probably somebody out there and
Well, that's what's going to happen on the 27th at the senior center. They're going to come and help people sign up. So hopefully we
Yeah,
can
they get a, I mean,
kickstart
the
that.
senior center event, this one, I was at the senior, no, just we're at the senior center meeting last week. And there's gonna be even more
Yes.
vendors, I don't know if that's the right word, but different organizations. I mean, I think he's gonna have.
information stations.
Yeah, information stations. I think there's gonna be two, instead of just the main room. I think they're gonna expand into the second room. There's gonna be a lot, I mean, it's kind of a little off topic, but it's on topic, like,
Is our tax assessor going to be there too, or somebody from the assessors department to explain the tax credits and whatever's available?
Speak to Sal about that in the morning.
If Sal, even if we have to, have somebody go and represent
this is
us.
a lot of seniors, and I know that Manny had said that they'll, he even usually will have like the senior center bus will go pick people up at the high rises too. So there's usually a big turnout, so it's.
Well, that won't necessarily help our issue.
I think to go to, if I may, Councilwoman, to go to Councilman Messier's point of a few minutes ago. So there's 900 ballpark, 900 households in town that are eligible, 18 taking taking advantage. Those 900 households are on LIHEAP now. All they need to do is call Westway Community Action and say, I want to be on LIWAP too. Okay. West Bay's reached out to folks. They've done mailings. They've tried to do phone calls. People are just not
It's tough.
returning their phone calls. They're going to do another outreach before the event on the 27th and try to get the numbers up. Because I've been
Sure,
told
they-
there is a lot of money to spend in that program, but it's going to expire early next calendar year.
Again, I apologize where I had to step out, but, I mean, I don't know what other discussion was going on about the $40, but
Are we allowed to, are those, sorry.
No, just answer Dave's question. Go ahead, Jeff.
I was just, so, do we have like a list, like, is that list public where if we were to like, could you give it to us and we could reach out to those, I don't know if this is even allowed, but we could.
The LIHEAP list?
No, I mean, we not be able to, but I mean, that would be helpful if I knew that my certain
That
constituents.
that was the very first thing that I asked,
I mean, I
can
can
we
reach
get a
out.
copy? And we were told no for privacy
Gotcha,
reasons.
yeah.
So they were going, we
No,
asked
I-
them
I-
to do
I
it.
understand,
Yeah.
but it would be helpful if I knew like,
I-
oh yeah, I could reach out to Bob and I
some
know he
people
needs
could
help.
get very insulted if you
Right.
reached out, like me as a council person. Hey,
Yeah, I
listen,
get it.
this is available to you. How do you know about my finances?
Right.
I'm not
So-
gonna
Yeah,
go down
right.
that road.
Well, it sucks. I wish you could.
That's.
And it's probably, people probably hear it and they think it's a scam. If I heard it and I was like, I probably would say this is too good to be true. And I mean, you may be getting that when you're getting such a small number. I mean, like you said, 18 was the number.
18.
So, yeah.
So Mark, when we went-
No, just most of the conversation was just how businesses are handled in comparison to residential.
businesses are about flow, right?
Right,
Like you
yeah.
said. I caught the end of that. Any other questions for Jeff or Tony?
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Again, this is the first hearing. Need a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Oh. Second.
All in favor? Ayes have it.
Yeah, continue.
Let me know when you're ready for the next.
Ready whenever you are.
Hold on one second.
We're all in one recording.
Does anybody need a bio?
Thank you, thank you.
Tony.
Thanks, Tony.
Nice talk to you. Sure, that's live.
Yep.
Okay, here
Thank
we
you,
go.
thank you, no.
Oh, he was looking at me when he said it.
Yeah, I know, yeah, exactly.
What do they call it? The hot mic, right? All right. Meeting call to order. Today is Monday, March 27th. It is now 7:07 PM. Fiscal year 24 budget workshop. Municipal. Mark, you want to start any open? I know you already started with an open statement, but you have anything?
I have nothing to add. Just one at a time.
All right. Number one, public library.
Sorry, page 30.
Page 30.
Good evening, council.
Yes.
I am happy to present FY '24 proposed budget for the West Warwick Public Library. The total we're requesting is roughly 0.75% of the overall town budget. And as always, I would argue that the library offers a very substantial return on the town's financial support. We, of course, offer access to books, music, and movies, story times and activities for children, public access to computers and Wi-Fi, and a wide range of programs for patrons of all ages. In addition to these typical library services, we offer classes on learning English and citizenship. Last year, we established a library of things from which patrons can borrow everything from a blood pressure cuff to a fabric steamer. In 2022, our free summer meals program served over 2,500 breakfasts and lunches to local children and teens. And we have now established a community pantry in the library that offers free food and personal care supplies. We also partner with a wide range of organizations who provide services and resources in conjunction with the library. A complete list would take quite a long time to describe, so I'll give just a few examples. Resources on Addiction and Recovery from the West Warwick Prevention Coalition. Free tax preparation services for residents provided by the AARP. A housing clinic for victims of domestic violence in collaboration with Sojourner House. Free healthy snacks for teenagers in partnership with Project Hand Up. A COVID testing site run by the Rhode Island Department of Health. Employment assistance and support through Job Club Rhode Island. Narcan distribution by Hope Recovery. And classes for seniors in conjunction with URI's Osher Lifelong Learning Institute. We are a very active member of the West Warwick Health Equity Zone, and a whole host of other community partners also have a regularly scheduled presence in the library building, including West Bay Community Action and Thrive Behavioral Health. We also provide meeting space for a wide range of community groups and state agencies. Our service to the community has been recognized by the Institute of Museum and Library Services, who in 2021 and again in 2022 named us as a finalist for the National Medal for Museum and Library Service, the nation's highest honor given to museums and libraries. We have just been named Rhode Island Library of the Year by URI's Graduate School of Library and Information Studies, and that award will be presented to us at an event in May.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Where's that event, Colin?
So the Crown Plaza in Warwick. All of this has been accomplished through the efforts and dedication of an exceptional library staff. The same staff, however, remain underpaid across the board relative to their peers in other libraries in the state. Already this year, both our youth services librarian and our adult services librarian have left West Warwick to take up better paid positions at other libraries. Both of these positions require a master's degree in library science, and the salary we are offering is about $26 an hour. Or to put this in a different context, using the most currently available figures, the median salary in the state for a library serving our size of population is 17% higher than the one we are offering. Part of my goal, therefore, for this year and beyond is to continue to build salary levels and so allow me to retain and recruit the outstanding staff that the patrons of the West Warwick Public Library deserve. And if anyone has questions,
Any
I would
questions
be
for Colin?
happy to answer them.
I want to first commend you on all the things that you do as a library. My question is why did the library start doing those things? I mean, there's already organizations in the town that handle a lot of that. So it seems like you stretched things very thin by taking on all these added responsibilities. And that might be another reason why people left, not just for money, but just because of stretching, or are all libraries doing this? I mean, this is the first I've heard that all these libraries.
So I mean, it's a very good question. It's a very good question. Libraries are changing. It is a trend that libraries are kind of taking up the slack from social service agencies. So I think if you asked many public libraries about, you know, if they had an unlimited budget, who they would hire, most of them would say a social worker. So we constantly have folks coming into the library who are turning to the library for help with accessing social services, mental health services. Librarians are not trained necessarily to provide. We can direct people towards those resources. We can't provide those resources, which is why we partner with so many organizations. But, you know, I would argue a good library is responding to the needs of its community. And so we see these needs. The library is also, you may have heard this phrase, a kind of neutral space in the community. So there are some of the issues we deal with have stigma attached to them. So, you know, so one of the examples I used, a clinic for victims, a housing clinic for victims of domestic violence. You can be coming into the library to go to that clinic to get housing help, or you could be there to borrow a DVD, and nobody's any the wiser. So people prize that aspect of the library, that it's a welcoming, safe space. And some folks feel more comfortable accessing those services in that way rather than directly.
No, and I understand that makes sense, but I mean, call me old fashioned, I guess. I remember when a library was just a library.
Yeah.
And, you know, to me, that was better times when you didn't have to hand out Narcan at a library.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just, and, you know, 22 years as a cop, I would never think to direct somebody to your local library to go get domestic violence help.
Yeah.
You know, it just, I don't know how that even.
I think it's the
develops.
opposite. I don't think necessarily people are directing to go to the library. I think it's that they end up at the library and then he directs them kind of outwards to those services.
I understand that.
Yeah,
I'm just saying that, you know, it's an unusual resource to have at a library.
It is. I would agree with you.
Is
I
all I'm
would agree
saying.
with
And I'm
you.
just curious as to how
Yeah.
it developed, and I
Yeah.
think your explanation was pretty good, so
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I say it year to year, and like I said, the job co-op thing and everything else
Yeah.
that you offer. I mean, it's, let's face it, not everybody goes to the unemployment office to go or have time to get there. So you run these things at night and whatever it is. So, you know, sometimes it's a great asset. I know all the years, and I know Linda and Nate can probably say they sat here and probably beat up the directors a few times to cut. And we've done a great job over the past few years to keep that budget in perspective, along with them raises. Now, I totally agree with you. To have a master's degree and make $26 an hour is, especially if you got student loans and whatever it's still paying, it's virtually impossible. And nothing against anybody, but I mean, there's salaries in here under maintenance are 25 change an hour, you know, and it's like,
No,
with no college debt or anything like that. So, you know, I understand, like, obviously,
and
it's
they've
really
got-
hard to keep somebody in a role when they can go make, you know, $5,000 more in the next community over. And like you said, with having your accolades of Library of the Year, you know, I'd want to be working there myself versus going to, you know,
Well,
But again-
that's the dilemma.
and we have
So,
that in a few of
yeah.
our departments, you know, and I know Chief Levine will be up here later on. I mean, he sent me a thing, a neighboring communities, you know, paying $15,000-$20,000 more a year as a starting pay. How, you know, how do we keep employees? So I know councils and this council and previous councils have been trying to work on that and do our best to keep the best. And, you know, and it's tough.
That's the domino effect of a lot of things, like people saying $15 an hour needs to be a minimum wage. You know, that's unsustainable for society, plain and simple. Your $1 cheeseburger is now gonna be $2.50. And, you know,
89 for us, medium fry, my friend.
yeah, so whatever it is, I'm just throwing the numbers out there, but I mean, but that's what happens. And then, of
Market
course,
basket.
then everything gets more expensive. So now $15 an hour for minimum wage is enough. It's gonna be $20 an hour. And it's just a snowball effect that keeps going up. And then when you have government jumping in to pay people's tuitions, obviously college is gonna say, hey, like we just said earlier, with, you know, college, if they're making money, we want the part of it. So they increase their tuitions. And, you know, so it's that never ending cycle of moving forward. It just seems to be accelerating too much, and it's gonna come to a breaking point.
But again, it's discouraging, like when Colin says that, you know, we got people leaving to go make a couple of dollars more. And unfortunately, I know what's happening in a lot of businesses. For instance, like you just said, $15 an hour is a new minimum wage. But you also have people who are working in the retail sector who've been there 15, 20 years. They're at the $17 to $19 marker, and the new guy walks in at $16 an hour, or even equal to what somebody's been there 10 plus years. So that is happening all over the place, and it is hurt.
And it's not just the library.
No.
We would have Chief Barone would say the same thing, Chief Levine would say the same thing, the superintendent would say the same thing. Our salaries are at the lower end. We've worked over the last couple of years to bring them up to something, but
But with that comes higher taxes.
absolutely,
Yeah, I think
absolutely.
it's a balance because
Well,
and
they-
you're
they're
100%
paying-
right, but it is a balance because sometimes if you don't retain, you know, especially, I mean,
cost.
we're not in
Yeah.
the police now, but the police, how much it costs to put a new officer through, you know, I mean, obviously.
And I completely understand all that. I'm just saying that, you know, there's gonna be a breaking point.
No, I agree.
Kind of straight off the library budget. I
Yes, I-
apologize.
Yes.
Well, that's what happens when you go to the library, you never know where they're gonna lead you, so.
Colin, I commend what you do.
Absolutely.
So do I.
Because it's
Especially picking up the good.
it's more than a library. There's no question. And the variety is incredible. But if you're going into, if the world now is going into that trend,
Mhm.
do you find, are there grants out there that can help? Like you mentioned the social work. with everything going on in the world between COVID and the shooting in Nashville today, I really think that, I think people do need a place to go to, a public agency. And with that, is there anything out there for, if you wanted, say, a social worker? Are there grants out there?
There are very few grants that would cover staffing costs, but to give you an example, we had a grant last year from OLIS, the state library agency, that enabled us to run some workshops in conjunction with Thrive Behavioral Health. So those workshops were conducted at the library using state library money. And now Thrive Behavioral Health have written the library into a grant that they've got funding for to enable us to continue providing some of those services. So I think the key is kind of building these partnerships with other agencies. And I think those agencies are starting to see the library as an appropriate place where they can do some of their work. It's almost, as I said, it's back to this issue about there are always going to be folks who are going to be a lot more comfortable accessing services in our location than they might be in their own. So,
Right.
You have built relationships with the individuals.
Become comfortable.
Yeah, I think part of it is also technology is making so people probably take out books less because you can go to an ebook. know.
Yeah, I mean, ebook usage of ebooks, especially during COVID, as you might imagine, absolutely skyrocketed.
So it kind of forced you into moving into different directions as well.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
it was a
mean,
natural
yeah.
flow in some sense, but kind of forced in another sense. you know,
Yeah,
just to-
but there are advantages. I mean, so I'll give you a concrete example of that. One very expensive things for libraries to do is to buy large print books, which kind of typically seniors sometimes want. And so we were always encouraging folks to use e-readers because you can make any book a large print book, simply change the font. And it was like the amount of resistance from the senior population to doing that was huge. Then COVID hit. Now we have seniors who are, they're on it. And you're right, that change was kind of forced. So, but yeah, I mean, libraries are changing, and that's one manifestation of it, that the use of print materials is going to go down. The use of digital materials is probably going to increase.
How will that affect you? Staffing wise, budget wise, people wise?
The ebooks are sort of purchased in a different way. They're purchased consortially, so we're part of a consortium. So we don't buy our own ebooks. We pay a fee to Ocean State Libraries, who then use some of that funding to purchase ebooks.
Anybody who has a library card can
Yeah,
log
yeah,
in
yeah.
and pick a book and read a book anytime they want.
So it may be that ratio of what the funding is used for. So perhaps more funding goes to programming rather than purchasing materials.
Back to your budget, a couple questions on the actual budget.
Sure.
Under, okay, my eyes are, I need the large print here.
I mean, you're a senior?
Yes, I'm getting,
All right, okay.
my AARP card's coming, so, you know.
You don't have to be a senior. My eye doctor said it usually changes at 40, and I hit 48 and I needed them, so I did good.
Under water, you put down 2,000, but it looks like, don't you really ever get up to that? Is that like a number that can be shaved a little bit? I mean, it's not a huge number, but just out of curiosity.
It was at our best estimate for
It's just a curious
fiscal
question.
year,
'cause
yeah.
Is 785 adopted 3,000 last year? You only used 395 this
They
year.
were closed rather often in 2022, right?
Yeah, because they were
Because,
higher back then, but that's why I don't understand what the difference was.
well, 21 was the COVID year, but it was to 22 budget. So that's why you see it drop down to 785. They were closed.
I know,
when
but 20 was a 19 year and it wasn't over. It's really
It was
not
1,200 and
Yeah.
1,500.
right. It's not, I'm just saying, just out of curiosity.
Yeah.
But my biggest question, I think, is under legal.
Yeah.
You're jumping up to 7,000.
Yep.
You expect them to be sued or?
I hope not. So my staff are not members of the municipal union. They're members of the Teamsters.
Okay.
The contract, so every year there's a salary and benefits reopener, which takes care of most of our legal budget. Last full contract dates in 2013. That contract for full negotiation is reopening this coming year.
Okay.
That's the reason
Okay.
for, so I anticipate
So
greater,
it's more,
higher
it's a
legal.
labor attorney type of a
Yeah,
thing. Okay,
absolutely.
gotcha.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
We're hoping not to be sued.
Yeah, I hope you don't get sued either.
Kristen, a question for you, the pension line, it's at 160 through 317, but we're gonna do 50.
Because the library just contributes 50 out of their allocation to their pension, so I'll be moving that to general government. Be moving everything over, but it's flowing through payroll.
Okay.
So it's just not worth it to do it till the end of the year.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for Colin? Thank you, Colin.
All right,
Thank you.
thank
Linda
you
and
all.
Nate. I know you're here every year in support of Colin. And many others. Page 22, fire.
Good evening, Chief. So during the calendar year 2022, the West Warwick Fire Department has been extremely busy meeting the current and preparing for the future needs of our community. 8,338 calls were responded to in 2022. That is about a 14% increase in just the last 2 years. Over 6,000 of those calls were EMS related, and close to 500 of those categorized as cardiac related. Roughly 10% of that 500 were actually cardiac arrests that the members worked to save. Under some new protocols, they require us to stay on scene administering advanced life support for 30 minutes. And I have a few numbers that I just happened to go through recently that I thought were very significant, and they replicate what is going on in the state also. So as our EMTs are fighting for individuals' lives, they are fighting for their lives. Pre-30-minute protocol, our success rate for ROSC, which is ROSC is responsive, spontaneous responsive circulation. So about 12% of the time, we were able to achieve a ROSC on scene. After the 30 minutes protocol was implemented, that increased to 26%. So we've seen a large increase, more than doubled. However, one of the statistics they're able to determine was that when we get on scene and someone has what's called a shockable rhythm, initially, those numbers had increased, and it was 26% before the 30 minutes, and then after the 30-minute protocol was instituted, it was 48.5%. So almost half the time, we're able to get a pulse back when we get there and there's a shockable rhythm. So those are some very important things that I wanted to share with you about what the West Warwick firefighters are doing out in the street. So in 2022, we also saw 100% of the West Warwick firefighters trained to the active shooter hostile event response. This is the national operations level. Each riding position on trucks have been outfitted and assigned ballistic protective equipment. Our firefighters continue to train for the worst while engaging our community for a better tomorrow. Our mobile integrated health and our community paramedicine program will be providing services in homes in West Warwick and beginning in May. Sorry, anticipated start. This was made possible from a grant from the Rhode Island Department of Health, where we are partnering with Kent County Hospital, Thunder Mist, and other health providers to help keep our residents in their homes when possible.
In addition, just a quick breakdown of the other 2,000 runs that we did that were fire related, 30 structure fires, 130 cooking fires, 14 boiler fires, 5 chimney fires. And I could go on and on with different statistics. I'll get to the budget while we're here. So the West Warwick Fire Department budget did see an increase of $3,333,000 or $333,000, 688. But just over about 3 million of this was from the mandatory reorganization of the pension expense. So remaining after we get rid of the pension increase is about $332,318, of which $182,381 were payroll expenses specifically for contractual obligations. There is a $150,000 increase in the overtime. We seem to be meeting our or exceeding our overtime budget consistently. Some of the line item budgets you probably noticed were in EMS fixed, which increased by $10,869. That reflects a maintenance agreement for our Lucas, which had not been budgeted for, but was a necessary expense. Our Lucas CPR is one of the devices we use to do chest compressions to allow our limited staff to perform other tasks. We've also seen an increase in oxygen and the delivery cost for that oxygen. And we also needed an update on our medication and protocol software. In our supplies and expenses, we need to update for a software, for maintenance of our software to do our staffing. In our alarm and radio, the other one that went up by about $20,000. That's to replace outdated radio box receivers in our communication center. And we also increased the general maintenance fund just because all the prices for all the different parts have increased. So that's kind of just a quick summation of what the budget increase is as presented.
Any questions for the chief? Just to clarify on the
Yep.
pension, this is just being moved over to their department from previous item line. So it was in general government. I'm making that clear for anybody who's watching or anything. It's not that we're paying $3.2 million just in, well, we are, but it used to be in general government. Now it's moved to each department based upon employee headcount.
Yeah, and you can see that in the personnel supplement. When you look at it, you see the benefits number has jumped as compared to last year, and it's because every individual's pension contribution base, the contribution is applied to their pensionable salary, so you're seeing it. That it looked like the benefits number jumped astronomically this year, but it's really just a shift. But when you're looking at the personnel supplement, I know there was a question on that, so I want to make sure everyone understands that that's what that was.
Talk about the 34 to 39.
Exactly, exactly.
I was gonna ask you if you're gonna present in, probably, I was thinking we probably should have did it at the very beginning, just to get it out of the way, but, all right. Couple of questions. EMT recertification,
Yes.
that seems like a significant jump.
Yes, because now we're rounding out, next year, they will have to get the recertification. So we do annual training. We have a contract, members are required monthly to do training. And then now we'll start getting into the instructors coming in and doing some of the training to do the recertification.
How often is that? Because,
It's a
going back the
3-year
last few
cycle.
years, say it's four,
Yeah,
going back
it's-
to 2020, it's only like 4,000.
Right.
Over the years, say roughly 4,000 for each year, and then we're jumping to 13,000 this year.
Well, it should bounce up and come back down. So it should have been an expense.
Because it's 4,200 in 2020, 3,200 in 2021, 3,900 in 2022. It's budgeted for $9,600. This fiscal year, you've only used 3,200.
I think part of it when we were going through the lines was that was previous, some of that was previously charged off to other accounts.
Another
You've
account.
streamlined it to accounts that you think make
It
more
should be in.
sense for tracking purposes.
Yes. That's true, to right. Forget about that. So that was in a different account, but it should be,
What account was it before?
should have been in either ambulance services or fixed, or I'd have to go back and find out.
If you don't mind shooting me an email on that when
I
you
will.
find it, thank you.
Absolutely.
Supplies and expenses, I mean, you covered that a little bit,
Yep.
but that's another significant jump. Say roughly $60,000 over the years, and we're jumping up to 105. Budget 97 for last year and only used 33 so far. Just wondering why that,
So I believe that not all of the, we had to do a reaccounting, because some of the things that were supposed to come out of that came out of other accounts. So
Same thing
we
as-
see, yeah, it's the same thing. So we reorganized, but we haven't been following what we need, where it needs to be taken from.
okay.
All right, so that's, I think alarm and radio are overspent right now. I don't have that line item right in front of me. I don't know if you do.
For,
But
for
actually,
supplies and
no,
expenses.
for,
Alarm, radio, computer.
yeah, alarm, radio, computer, no, he's still low, so. I could take him,
Again, if you can find those for me and just
I
shoot me an
will.
email, I appreciate it. Thank you.
absolutely.
And then just so my last one is, what is wellness? It's a new thing on here for $5,000.
Yes, so it's a wellness committee. For them, that's contractual agreement that we have. It, so they want to get like, some treadmills for the stations and some other things for the comfort and, health of the members.
And I know that the manager made a couple of changes. I don't know if that's gonna be discussed tonight or if it's just there because we're gonna pick a number as the budget goes on, obviously.
Yeah, we can share a couple of those.
Before you do that, chief, question on turnout gear.
Yes,
Um,
good question. I got a little response for you, probably head you off. So we ordered gear in September. The fabric is still not in, the gear that we ordered in September. So I recently spoke with manufacturer and they're offering to bump us up to the next level gear. It's usually another $400 a set to get that. So we're waiting for that to come in to see if we're going to purchase more of that after we get it in.
okay,
Okay.
that's why that number is like
That's why,
not
yeah,
spent.
yeah. It's just one of those.
I got you. Thanks.
Just a couple of notes that I have. The chief can probably expand on it, but under the training budget, he was originally looking to bring in some instructors in-house to do a significant portion of training, including candidate for dispatcher training. He reviewed that and anticipated hoping not to need them. So that was just one of the cuts we made in the training line.
Right now, we're even. We just hired our last three members in January, and right now we're even, provided we don't lose anyone on laterals or.
Another one was turnout gear, reducing his anticipated need by 2 complete sets. From 17 down to 15, I believe, so that cut 11,000. And the last was alarm, radio, computer. The biggest cut of that was actually moving funds. That was, he was looking to do some IT improvements out of his individual budget, but we moved that along with some other departments as a capital expense item to replace a cyclical replacement of some desktops. Trying to split that up to do an amount each year instead of.
So Chief, are you comfortable with the manager's new numbers or are you still looking? for
Yes,
your
no,
numbers?
No, we went through that, and I'm comfortable with the manager's new numbers.
Thank you.
Explain. I'm gonna ask you a fire question, probably put both of you on the spot. You're both 24/7, 7 days a week
Yes.
for dispatch. You have 4 dispatches, police have 6. How do you do with 4?
They do a tremendous job. We have two retired battalion chiefs and a retired Warwick firefighter in that office, and it's, they do a tremendous job. It's, to have one person in that room is very challenging. So, I would.
The amount of calls over.
It's the amount of calls and you know what happens? It's like an evil cloud comes over the town and you get hit all at once. Everything happens all at once and all of a sudden they're overwhelmed.
And
You know?
Lieutenant Poole suddenly
So-
appears on the radio.
Yeah,
under a lot of
so,
circumstances.
so we do have like during the day, 2 or 3 other members in communications that can go up there and assist. Monday through Friday, that's not always when things happen. So, we do have a process in place to get someone back on overtime as quickly as possible. But, it's definitely a loose spot. I won't call it a weak spot, I guess, having one person there. So,
I was just wondering.
Yeah.
I was just comparing.
but again, they do a great job. They really, very proud of those guys.
Any other questions for the chief? If you want, if you have any responses from Mark, just send it
I
to the
will.
entire council so we have it. Sure. Absolutely.
I think you have EMA
Yeah,
next.
Mess-
EMA is
Oh,
next, so don't go too
Not
far.
that there's much to talk about.
That's page 14.
So that's being level funded from the previous year. And we did go through a little bit of a change with the assistant director. Yeah, our previous assistant director was, has a lot of issues going on and was unable to continue. So we did get Chris Seelabrandt, who's retired captain from the fire department, who wanted to get involved in this. And so he is going to be taking over as the assistant director of EMA. Looking forward to that assistance. We did make a couple of purchases this year. One of the things I've always thought about adding in here is something to do with the homeless and I feel like I do get tapped on, for different issues on that. Obviously, we want to be as understanding as we can be with everyone in town. And, this gets to a crisis, especially during extreme weather situations, yeah. So that's something I guess I didn't put it in yet, but it's definitely something I think we need to think of as a municipality is how we can help, in those situations on extreme weather events.
And I know you personally, and I know Colonel Levine have always worked with Hez and whoever else and other assistance facilities in town to help them. So it's a duty, you guys have taken on. So thank you for that also.
Well, it's a, the municipality, has a responsibility to the community, obviously. And these are members of our community that are homeless. And so on those times, we end up going in using private resources to get hotel rooms. And, so whether it is getting some sort of a voucher to hand out on those types of days, obviously, we can't, afford to put people up in hotels all the time, and so, but having a voucher for 1 night or 2 nights or something like that, that we could use when necessary on those extreme nights, would be one way to do it. That's not solving the problem. I'm not trying to say that is by any way. There's a lot of different things. We've been in contact with several different organizations on different projects in town, hopefully in the near future to help, get more toward what they call primitive supportive housing, which would be housing that also have resources in the housing to get people assistance.
Hoping the state continues doing as much as they've been doing. quicker. And, you know, they have, but unfortunately, sometimes it does happen, or people resist, and you do find people somewhere in the town, sitting somewhere or doing whatever, but, you know,
It's the heads who really, lead the charge there. They're out in the community all the time, making the contacts and making sure people have,
they get to know the individual. Yeah, I know I've been on scene where they know the person, like, I'll use the gazebo as an example. They walk right up and they know the individual, they talk to the individual, they have history with the individual. So it's a great, is a great asset to the community. Really.
Mark, didn't we have, or isn't there a possibility, or we were looking into the possibility of perhaps applying for some money through the federal government as well?
So they do come up with some things occasionally. They're more, like the chief had mentioned, doing in conjunction with some of the social service agencies, like Colin mentioned, the library, and Thrive. The opportunities are typically the same thing, that we would partner, and it seems much cleaner depending on the opportunity. The government agency needs to be the applicant, some social service agency being the applicant, with the town being a partner. Kind of depends on where it's coming from and the reporting mechanism that they want back. Usually the social service agency is much more hands-on and can come up with the statistics and the tracking and the reporting mechanism. But those opportunities we always do kind of look for, and it's the social service agencies that typically, come forward. And with it, I know the chief mentioned with housing during the extreme colds or storms, we had a couple, probably within the last 45 days, that we were teetering on what can we do during those particular events. But with the help of the social search agents, they went out and reached out to those people, and the people that were in limbo, if you will, declined assistance. So we didn't end up needing to do it, but that's something that always kind of comes up. If push came to shove and we needed to be helpful, as a person in need, we figure it out. But if there's a way to identify it, we definitely prefer to do.
With the deep freeze one at the end of January was one of those, I think. Yes. It's only been a couple I can think of in the last couple of years. And then the hurricane, which didn't really come through too hard, which I guess is almost 2 years ago now, but we end up using the teen center. Is that what we use? in that
We've used a
situation?
few different during warming
Oh, the Civic
centers, but typically that's during normal business hours when
Senior
our
centers,
senior
yeah,
center, the library, when it's
library.
open.
libraries always.
The youth center, we can open the civic center for larger scale events. We talked a few times about some homeland security type grants to beef that up. We'll mention it during the capital part of this. We were looking for a generator for the civic center, but that's something I think we can look to that type of funding source. Use that as a reserve emergency operations center and a shelter, and do some improvements up there with that in mind.
Any other questions for the chief? Thank you, chief.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, those chairs are not comfortable.
Evening.
Good evening.
Does everybody have a copy of the budget highlight sheet that I sent out last week?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think I have
I'll take a copy because otherwise I gotta look it up.
different than, oh, yeah,
There's stuff sitting on my printer right now. I'm like, I can't believe I got that.
no, it's not.
I have one. Thank you very much, though.
Just makes it a little easier to follow. Yes, you sent this.
So first of all, I just want to say, my men and women, men and women of the West Warwick Police Department, both sworn and civilian, continue to do a great job for the community that we serve. We're facing challenges just like other departments with recruiting and retention, both on the civilian side and the sworn side of the of our department. You'll see that it is affecting our overtime budget. As much as I'd like to say that I see an end to that, the reality is I don't see a definitive end to that. I think we're still gonna be suffering from staffing shortages and continue to hurt our overall overtime budget. Just for a quick synopsis, if you follow along on the budgetary highlight sheet that I passed out, the total increase request was $270,738. And that's a culmination of the top 10 items, which are mostly due to salary and benefit increases. And those numbers were provided to me by the finance department, as well as the next 6 items, which are my requests based on review of the last several years of those budgetary line items, for a total on that of $85,294. The 5 items in red are decreases in my proposed expenditures for a grand total, again, putting the pension breakout by department to the side. I'm asking for a total overall increase request of $184,812. Again, not including the pension breakout by department.
Chief, I have a few questions.
Sure.
And these are just based on numbers, current numbers. The clothing allowance
Yes.
increased from 109 in 22 to 124 in 23, 124,000. But you've only spent 6,400.
The clothing allowance comes out I believe
And
it's
it
the
is-
second pay period in April. So we haven't expended most of that money yet.
Will you reach the 124,800?
Most likely, yes. Because right now, we've hired, I believe it's 8 officers over the last year. So where we might have had a little bit of a deficit because we didn't have, we had vacancies.
Yeah.
So that wasn't applicable to the vacancy. Those officers are now currently on the job. So we will spend more this year than we did last year.
The other question I have is community policing.
Yes.
That went up from 2,000 in 22 to 6,900, which was adopted last year. We've only spent 1,500. Is that something? What are your plans for the community policing?
2 weeks ago, we just had an officer actually bid to that position. Due to the staffing memorandum of understanding, that position was vacant. So that's why we will have a little bit of a surplus in that line item. We just had a detective that bid to that position 2 or 3 weeks ago. She's now in that position. So I expected there be more community involvement with some expenditures for, different functions that we're gonna have.
Can any officer be, I mean, I'm sure, like, as you said, you bid into it, like you bid into the animal shelter. But can any officer be involved in community policing?
Well, I mean, it might sound kind of cliche, but I expect that all
All of
52 members of my police department are community policing oriented officers, including our civilian staffs that deal with the public day in and day out.
So what does this money go for?
Different events. We might host a block party. We might host some kind of an event at the youth center to have youth groups come through, and we might buy snacks and stuff like that.
Okay.
So there's no specific earmark for every single bit. Neighborhood crime watch group.
It's more like
materials.
expenses.
It is expenses, yes.
I think the biggest one that we put in during my last year was in the hopes of having a community citizens police academy would run out of that office. And that's just something with COVID, it just getting pushed
didn't
off
have
and
that
pushed off. And then we didn't have the staff to do it. So
Didn't happen.
The last one was in 16, I think. It was right before I got on the council.
that's
I know
always
Ed
been
did it.
something that we'd like to bring back.
Yeah, the town manager and I have spoken about that. And again, a lot of it was, there was just a vacancy as far as an actual physical body being in that position. So it was more difficult, but our grand plan is to have a citizens police academy relatively soon.
I have one more question.
Yes.
And it's kind of, Dave, you brought up with Chief Barone about dispatchers. What do your dispatchers make? as far as rate of pay.
Not nearly as much as surrounding communities.
Like-
I couldn't tell you the dollar amount,
It's in the contract.
$24, $25 an hour in that area. You know, and that's been, it's been a problem for us. We've had civilian dispatchers that we've hired. One gentleman completed the training process, the program, field training, so to speak. He was set to go on his own in a week. And he just said, you know what, this isn't for me. It's kind of not my thing. And he left. We've also had several part-timers just recently to take the part-time positions, because right now we have a vacancy, a full-time position and 2 part-time positions. They come in for a little while, they do some training, they find out it's really not for them. A lot of responsibility, as I'm sure you know, a lot of responsibility. I mean, you have people on the phone that are calling during their worst days of their lives, and you know, without having a strong background, then it can be challenging. So the issue, I think, becomes we have dispatchers that do one heck of a good job. They keep us safe, they keep our citizens safe. They're making what, they've been here 10, 12, 14 years, and they're making less than starting pay in other communities.
So a dispatch,
That's problematic.
as of 1/1/23, dispatcher makes $908.40 a week. A senior dispatcher makes $953.81 a week, according to the contract.
40 hours or 37, 40.
Might be at 100, some of them.
Yeah, some of them are. yes.
Lately,
Is it a
yes.
40-hour position? It's full-time.
40
full-time is
40 hours
40?
position.
And that is in the union contract, correct?
The pay raise,
Yeah.
the pay rates,
Pay
yes, it
raise.
is, yes. The part-timers, I don't believe are in the union contract, right, correct? But the full-timers are. So we should have 6 full-timers, and I believe it's 2 part-timers.
Your overtime budget, 992,000, 1,234, 1,234,000, 1,360, and you're only asking for 950. How are you gonna make that happen?
Well, honestly, it's a forecast, and, I try to remain somewhat optimistic without being completely off the rails. I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm gonna keep using that term. I'm cautiously optimistic that we've had 8 officers over the last year. They're all off of field training. They're all on probation right now. The expiration of the memorandum of understanding just moved 6 people out of the patrol division. They kind of took a bunch of those. I'm gonna remain cautiously optimistic that the overtime level will come down a little bit because we have some bodies. But the reality is this: if I came to you and asked for $1.5 million in overtime, I'm probably not going to get that, because if you're spending it on overtime, you're probably saving some of it in salary. I mean, there's a little bit of an offset there. Knock on wood, at the end of the fiscal years, I've been okay, not great, but I've been okay. I'm just cautiously optimistic that we're going to be able to, fill some holes. The problem really becomes military deployments are, I don't want to say hurting us, because that has a negative connotation. It affects us. I won't say negatively. I mean, myself, my predecessors, the men and women of the police department, I mean, we respect our veterans and our full service members, and we're glad that they're part of our team. But the fact remains, when they go on deployments, when they're extended deployments, it does affect our overtime budget. I mean, we have to replace them, and there's a cost to that. And I would rest easy saying that we have a higher than normal rate of either veterans or active service members in our agency. And I'm proud of that, but there is an effect to that.
Yeah, I just, it seemed like such a low number. I figured, I'd ask the question, I kind of figured I knew what the answer would be. Obviously, like you said, you came looking for 1.2 million you spent it over the last few years. It's gonna be tough for us to say yes. And I know what you're saying about, some finance people say, no, you're better off running a few people well and paying the overtime, because you're not paying the salary, the benefits, and all the other stuff.
You're not going to hear that come out of my mouth. I mean, I'm not going to buy into that, to be honest with you. No, I know you're not
Said a
saying
few
that.
finance people, I'm
Yeah.
not even pointing the finger at Kristen.
Yeah.
I don't know if she says that
Yeah.
or not. I've just heard that over the years. That's the way some people think. And, that's, and you know what, it may actually even be factual until something bad happens.
Right.
You're way under, so.
Right, the net effect, you have the personal issue. Yeah, we have officers and dispatchers alike, that are getting ordered in before and after their shift on their days off. And that quickly becomes, a safety and an officer wellness issue and a dispatcher wellness issue. So that's not lost on me, and it's not lost on, I know, the town council and the town manager. So we're working on that. But at the end of the story, I believe is, I think we can control our overtime to some degree, and we are saving something in salary. There's going to be a time where, they're going to collide a little bit because, when we have officers in the police academy, when we have recruits in the police academy, we're paying them salaries. So they're taken from the salary line item. They're also getting some kind of benefits. They're also receiving overtime while they're in the academy, and they're not helping us immediately reduce our overtime. It's not until after they're done with field training, graduate the academy, field training, and they're on their own do they start positively affecting our overtime. And there's that lull period. There's that period in the middle that kind of hurts us from both angles. Right.
My last question is kind of answered in your handout, or most of my questions were answered in your handout, so I appreciate the handout. Thank you. But the TIAA, it's probably more of a question for Kristen on that. What exactly is that? I know it's not a large amount of money, but it's still money.
So that's for any new employees that started after September 1st, 21, 22, 21, that are in the new MERS, what they call the state MERS plan, not the legacy pension plan. So 5% of their contribution, they contribute 7%. 5% goes to TIA CREF, 2% goes into their defined benefit plan. The town contributes 1% to TIA CREF for those employees.
Because it's not in all the budgets. It's in most of the budgets, but not only, I didn't see it in the fire department budget.
Because they don't contribute to it.
Okay, that's why I was like, all right, it's in certain budgets, but not in other budgets. I knew it had something to do with the pension, but I just wanted to clarify what exactly it was. All right, thank you.
Any other questions for the colonel?
Thank you.
I know the next item is general government, but we do have Department of Public Works in the back, and they do have to get up very early in the morning.
Make them last.
Can we go Department of Public Works? We can skip general government. We've got two items, Parks and Rec. Good TV show, by the way.
Good evening, council. I want to thank you for moving us up. I appreciate that. Also, I'd like to thank you guys for giving myself and Glenn the opportunity to be the heads of this department. I think with the two of us, we have a great team with Glenn and I. And I think it shows with the amount of work that's getting done on a daily basis throughout the town. Over the last year and a half, things have really stepped up. The town is looking better, and things are getting done in a more efficient manner than they have in the past. That being said, I'm going to let Glenn present the DPW budget. Right, because baptism by fire. And I also want to say that although we worked together on this part of the budget, Glenn did quite a bit of the legwork, and he did a fantastic job.
Evening, council. Hey, Glenn.
Glenn. All right, so we asked for $5,721,603. The town manager cut it down to 5,704,653 for a 13% increase. Our biggest increases are solid waste. It's 18.36%. Tip and fees increase. Supplies and expenses. We're asking for a 3.25 increase for inflation. Our major winter needs. This year we went over that due to a $10 a ton increase in salt.
Yeah, so,
Well, we had the same amount of storms as last year, sanding events, and we actually used less salt this year, so. And that gives us 600 tons on hand. So some of the overage will carry over to next year.
You have the same increase with pension.
Yes, yep.
580,
Yep.
7,700 to 580.
That's a big one.
Five and now is explained.
Question on sidewalk repair.
Sidewalk, sure.
I know the manager had cut it in half. Some of the sidewalks are bad,
We could actually use a lot more than that.
really bad. I personally, I think when I've looked at the budget, there's areas I think we can shave, and there's areas I think, I would disagree with you with that.
I think,
with the
I
sidewalk.
think it's very important, just that I think the sidewalks and the preventative maintenance, we have outside funding sources that I think we can do a better job at tapping. I mean, when we did this, had the same exact conversation last year. The proposal was, and we'll get to it at the end of the agenda with the review of American Rescue Plan, is that I think we can use that, but there's also, since that time, there is an infrastructure bill that's out there, and there are other opportunities. I think we're gonna meet tomorrow on a Main Street grant that closes in a couple of weeks to try to build, Main and Washington Street sidewalk and curb replacement, and get that application in. It comes with some matching funds that we need, whether that's American Rescue Plan or some of this money. But again, just like the previous two directors ago, I think it's important to have some type of seed money here. So, year round, we can take care of some of those smaller safety issues and try to seek the grant funding for a bigger, we want to do London Avenue because it's a heavily traveled street for schools, or the business district where we can identify, we need so many yards of, sidewalk and curbing redone, and try to use those smaller amounts for the safety concerns.
Currently, we have 13 sidewalks on the list that are considered hazards that we're working. We have 3 open right now that we're working on. So the money for those is coming out of that. right now.
What does it roughly cost for a sidewalk in front of somebody's house?
About $40 a foot in concrete. So then you add in material and labor, probably $60 a foot. So an average sidewalk, say 1,500. Yeah.
Okay.
For a safety repair.
So that, those grants you're talking about, does that cover if residential needs it in case?
In that 15 to 3,000, we're also putting, which I know we already paid for, but I like to add.
Right.
That time that we spend on it. Plus, any other materials we need to form it up. Plus
Mesh.
Put inside the sidewalk. So all that's included. It's not just concrete, okay? When I do it, I like to add things so we know what we spend per man, per sidewalk.
So do you think that's enough? Is it 15?
I mean, it's always good to have more,
I'd
but,
like to-
but we only have a limited amount. So to me, we tried to be reasonable and find something that was a decent seed that, should we get no grants, at least they could get started, and then see where else we have opportunities to draw from.
Well, this year, that's great. Got a little more than 4,000. Some of them. Very, they have it.
And just something else to consider is, like, to me, those safety concerns or small sections, that's easily done in-house by our own crews. But if we were to look at a significant project, that may be a combination of town crews and subcontracting, if you're talking about doing, from the police station over to somewhere down Washington Street, and somewhere down Main Street.
And that's why probably shouldn't be in the DPW budget. I would envision a town-wide sidewalk project that would go out to bid in all likelihood, or come off an MPA or something like that, and it would be done by an outside, I would think. Because
Problem with this, Mr. Nicole. And we're out from your house doing the sidewalk, we have a legitimate safety concern, a lot of paving in. And Mark lives next door. to you. He's gonna come up and say, well, you're doing this sidewalk.
Bet I will.
I don't have a sidewalk, so.
Where do you end it and where do
Right.
you know, and you have a legitimate safety concern. He wants one because he has a crack in it. How do you tell him that his isn't a safety issue and yours?
Play with the direct.
I've done very good with it, but it's still.
Yeah, no, I understand. I understand.
So, Mark, you said other funding sources is something that you can give us like a rough guesstimate of what that other source would add up to, or?
The one that we're looking at, we're gonna talk about tomorrow, it was recommended up to $500,000.
So far more than 15,000.
we talked about CDBG at one point in time also, and whether that was.
She's in on the meeting because the
Perfect.
two, it's a Main Street. It's called the
Yep.
Main Street Initiative,
Yep.
so, I mean, typically that, I mean, that covers, in my opinion, Main Street, Washington Street, both Phoenix and Hardwick. Perhaps, we'll do some work probably in what I call the Centerville area, but part of that might be part of the Crompton Playground area. There's some needs down there. And, whether they consider Main Street based on CDBG formula, I'm not sure if parts of No London Avenue could count towards that.
So
I think it
Tanglewood
can.
is a CDBG area, whether that sidewalk, I mean, right, but perhaps there are other,
Elaine's in that meeting with us
Perfect.
tomorrow, so we'll kind of talk about the
Perfect.
parameters, because I think the applications due the end of the first week of April. So
One of the things that I talked about, and the option of and the price of the cost of it, not so much on our main street, but our side streets that we have to replace. It's cheaper.
I hate the look of that. That's,
Well,
Yeah.
I don't disagree with you.
What most
but
people say is that. it
If
looks
it's a,
The big burn. flat burn.
if it's a fix to, the problem, and you're gonna get the same result. Not saying everywhere, but there are some places where you have an asphalt sidewalk here, a cement sidewalk here, an asphalt sidewalk here. We're replacing this one, let's just put asphalt because the other two are asphalt.
it matches, but I know they did it over in New London, the four corners there. They put the asphalt sidewalks all the way down.
They're
Rocks on the rocks too. Yeah, at the church. It's,
Well, that's one of the ones.
actually, I think a lot of New London is asphalt already.
Yeah,
Some of it has grown over, but I think it is. And the
It has
fact
to
that
be
that,
widened and-
fact that that goes up to the schools, I think that that's important to address that.
any other questions for DPW?
Comfortable with the manager's changes?
Yes, Glenn and I, again, we've looked it over and, there wasn't any big changes, so we're very comfortable.
Well, he did increase one spot, so I'm sure you're happy with that one.
fuel,
Yeah, fuel. I was looking, that one makes a lot of sense, yeah. Definitely have to increase that one, the way things have been moving. Otherwise, you answer the questions I had, so.
Move on to Parks and Rec. Don't go too far.
Okay, as far as Parks and Recs goes, I just want to go over some of the things that we're in the process of doing and some of the things that we've already been brought up to date on. Over the past year, we've had 4 brand-new scoreboards donated from people in the community that put scoreboards on all our fields, with the exception of the middle field at Natick, which is not used as much, but I'm working on getting something for that also. We're in the process of having 7 fields redone. 3 of them have been completed. If you guys get a chance to go over and look at the Little League field and the girls senior field, they look fantastic. They
The
finished,
outfield fence is done too?
yep, the fence isn't quite done. They're in the process. They got more than half of it done today. They finished laying the rest of the turf today. It looks fantastic. McCarthy was opened up to the high school today, so they're out there playing on the field. Want you to know it's
days early,
before
huh?
April 1st. I just want you guys to know that.
Early, huh?
So that leaves us 4 fields left to be done. Talking with STS, this week they're gonna come in and they're going to laser level and replace the material on Ray Silva. And then the other 3 fields will be done later in the summer. They have other obligations they have to get to.
What do they do on Lee Silva?
The infield dirt,
Okay, all right.
they're gonna laser level it and add material. It's a little low, so it needs material brought in. And from talking to STS, we're putting a significant amount of money into these fields. Every 4 years, I know I brought this to you before, every 4 years, we're gonna add it into the budget to have the fields laser leveled and material added if needed to protect our investment. It's between $5,000 and $6,000, but that's short money to protect the investment that we put into these fields. Yes, yes, because what they do is they come in, they laser level it, they grade it all out, and they add material where it needs to be added. Most of the time, it's the whole skin. Where they're adding material, 'cause over the 3 or 4 years, you don't think about it. You played baseball for years, you don't think about it. When you play baseball, you slide, you have hundreds of games a night. You're bringing a little bit of that field home with you every day in your pants, and what they, shoes, what they put in the outfield when they slide. So
Inside.
you don't think about that stuff until you hear it from somebody who does it every day.
So what
It
are
adds
you
up.
talking for fields per 4 years?
Well, what I would do is, I would add one in a year. So it might be a little more than 4 years. It would be staggered. It wouldn't be all at one time. I would do it so they're staggered. So we're not eating that whole expense at one time. So it might be 4,000 this year, 4,000 next year. So when I say every 4 years, one field might go 6. But that's
I'm
okay.
imagining if you have 10 fields and it's
Based on
1,000, it's 40,
usage
it's
too.
Right,
nothing
you're gonna base it on usage. You're not gonna do you're not gonna do the girls' junior field every 4 years when it doesn't get the play that McCarthy gets, and that's what I'm gonna get to next here in a minute.
If I could just interrupt you, Jeff,
Sure.
just 1 second. To me, my vision with that is to try to not hit our annual general fund for that type of maintenance. If we can actually come up with the proper fee structure and dedicated revenues going into an account dedicated to maintain our investment. So that way the people that are using it, that are paying the fees, can see the benefits of what
How it should be.
they're paying is. So since we're, like I said, since we're doing such a heavy investment in this, we want to be able to maintain it. So
And I think that's part of the fee schedule and updating that you've
Correct,
actually
right.
looked at. And I'm not sure we got to implement many for this year. I don't know what we've booked so far.
We
but-
haven't been able to, and
Went
the
past
manager
that,
can
yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong, we haven't been able to implement anything yet. It'll be more of July.
Yep.
So anything after July. So next year it'll definitely be a big increase. And it is something that I've been wanting to do since day one when I got the parks, and you guys, I've mentioned that to you, so it's something we gotta work on. The basket, all the fields have all brand new lights on them. With the exception of soccer, basketball courts, tennis courts, and skate park have lights. I just had, the basketball courts, crack sealed and repainted.
And is
although-
that good enough? Because there were some
Yeah,
significant.
we've looked at them. They did a very good job crack sealing.
Skateboarding, a couple of them.
That's gonna buy us, to be totally honest with you, that's gonna buy us another probably 2 years.
Okay.
And then we're gonna have to look at replacing them. We might be able to crack seal them one more time and then
So-
replace them, but it's something that we're gonna have to start planning for, definitely. Replacing them and crack seal, and I have to crack seal, which I'm gonna wait till July. But I'm gonna have to crack seal the tennis courts because some of them are getting bad also. So in 3 to 5 years, we're gonna have to look at replacing those also. Because the cracks are just gonna keep getting bigger and you can only put Band-Aids on them for so long. As far as events coming up this year, at River Point, McCarthy and Ray Silver, we're hosting several tournaments this year, including the Firecracker Tournament and the Slugfest, which brings in, between both tournaments, hundreds of teams to the complex, hundreds of people, hundreds of fans. We're also hosting the high school Division 1, 2, and 3 state championships this year. Also the senior and junior Legion regionals, which we have teams coming from all over Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Virginia.
We don't even have a Legion team here.
We do now. They are going to have one.
Reactivated?
Yep. We're hosting the high school all-star tournament this year. We have several AAU teams that want to rent the fields for tournaments, plus all the men's leagues that we usually have. So we have a lot of events going on.
So tell me about those hundreds of teams that are gonna come in.
Well, you have, when I say hundreds of teams, I apologize, hundreds of kids. 'Cause
Okay,
You're gonna
I was
have
gonna
anywhere
say,
between, you're gonna have anywhere between 10 to 15 teams with 13 kids on each team, plus, fans, plus coaches. So it brings in quite a bit of revenue for us. Year before last, we got rained out bad because the field held so much water, we couldn't do anything. Last year, we had rain, but it filtered out and we were able to play, which was beautiful. We didn't lose any days. So we have a lot of events to look forward to, and with redoing the other fields, I hope to solicit, get some more tournaments coming in. So that being said, any questions you have for me?
I have one, Jim, just on irrigation. Brand new line item.
Yep.
60 grand. Are all the fields irrigated?
Every field will be irrigated after this fall, with the exception of Amby Smith and Flat Top. Everything will have irrigation on it. Amby Smith will not have irrigation on it because it was just an astronomical amount of money to put irrigation on that field coming in from the road. Plus not knowing whether they were gonna pass the all-day referendum for kindergarten and talking with the school department, if they have to add on anywhere over there at Maisie Quinn, it's gonna be where that field is. So we don't wanna be putting a ton of money into it if we're not gonna be using it. Plus, high school now has moved from Amby Smith. They're playing at River Point. So
Are they practicing at River Point?
they will not be able to get on the field till the second week in April. They know that, they understand it, they're good. They will be practicing it between Amby Smith and a roadside field at Natick for the first 2 weeks, and then they'll be able to get on their field. So, as far as irrigation goes, last year, very dry summer, you know that. With the amount of, we had some leaks and stuff that we had to take care of, which we fixed all those, but it still cost us $45,000 for irrigation last year. Now you add 2 more fields to it.
That's not for fixing anything, that's just,
Well, we had one,
Irrigation
if you
for water
remember
itself.
back a few years ago, 2 years ago, we had a significant leak that was never repaired, and we had a bill in October for $20,000. So we were losing thousands and thousands of gallons. Myself and the crew found it, we repaired it, fixed it. That saved us, but last year, with the fields being redone, we had to run irrigation 3 times a day, 24 hours a day, for weeks on end to get the grass to take to the ground. So you gotta figure we're gonna have the same problem this year with the field, 3 fields being redone. We're gonna be running them constantly, so plus adding the 2 fields at Natick. That's why I bumped it up to where it is right now. And we'll see where we're at this year, whether we have a dry summer or wet summer. The good news is with the new irrigation system that we have, it all gets run by our phones, okay? It'll tell us, basically, for lack of a better term, tell me true. It lets us know when we need the water, how long we need the water. You know, it could say you don't need the water for 3 days. Okay, so it's gonna tell us everything we need to know, and it can turn on and shut off by us. So it's a very good system. We just have to get the internet over to Fox.
Sorry. Budget item now. What was that, Jeff?
I said, we just have to get the internet over to Fox.
There's nothing hard about it. One question I do have, and I know I brought this up last budget season, is the Phoenix Square Park, the walkway. And I know we were talking about different funding, but can we get that done this year? Because the other day, 2 children were going through there running, and I saw one take a nice header because he tripped over the bricks, kind of sticking up. And before it becomes an action, I'd like to see something put on that, whether it's gonna be opera funds or whatever, but that's been an ongoing issue for the last 5 years. And somebody previous to your administration decided to take the bricks out in certain areas and just pour cement in the hole. And that is just,
What I'd
now we
like
have
to do
holes.
is get together with yourself, the manager, myself and Glenn, go down and decide what we want to do. Well, a couple different options, figure out the cost, maybe something we can do within the budget. Or, we all know what it's from. It's the roots. That's the biggest problem is the roots. Have to get rid of the roots to fix the problem. one way or
I
another.
know one year I was down there with my own tools, taking the bricks out, knocking the roots out, and then putting the bricks back. It was a Thanksgiving week, because it was
Yeah,
just,
with the Christmas tree. lighting and
it was
everything.
just, there was a lot more humps in that park than what there is now, but again, I'm not a pro at it. I can tell you
We can
that.
definitely get it done this year. It's just a matter of fitting it in at a timely.
They get this area on the side of town hall cleaned out. See those flagpoles nicely, you see the flag going there.
The ropes have to be replaced on those, but they can be done too.
The supplies and expenses line, can you talk about that? I mean, the numbers is very different.
Well, the 60 moved down to irrigation, 60 of it.
That's what I figured it
Yeah.
was, but
Is everything,
if that was said, I missed it, and I apologize.
no, everything used to be. Everything used to be lumped in just with Parks and Recreation to supplies and expenses. And it was very hard, and maybe it was just me, but it was very hard to figure out where things came from and how much we spend on different things. So we had myself, Glenn, Mark, and Kristen, we decided we put that in another line item to show the difference. You'll notice one thing that we don't have in the budget anymore that's gonna save us money on certain things is the amount of guys we have part-time wages. Also, it's usually just in supplies and expenses, but it'll save us money, porta john. Again, $24,000 in porta johns is mind blowing. So, I think with the budget that we proposed and what the manager's proposing, I think is more than fair and adequate to run the department.
Any other questions for Jeff and Glenn? Thank you, gentlemen. General
And
government.
if I were you, I'd just keep going out the door, but that's up to you. Yeah.
Well, as long as you don't need us for anything else.
I skipped general government, didn't I?
Yeah, but do you want them for capital?
Oh, you
Oh,
want 'em
you have to
stay?
stick around for capital.
Well, there's not much there though, right?
Let's do capital because I'm sure that's. Capital. The fire department for, police department has no capital. Fire department has 3 air packs for 21,000 and hose for 15,000. DPW, 10-wheel truck at 70,000. Rotary 4-post lift, 19,885. Parks Department has bucket tractor to replace the 1980 John Deere Gator. Bucket tractor to replace the Gator? Oh, all right, I'm sorry.
No.
I read the wrong line. It's my fault. Okay. All right, never mind. John Deere Gator utility vehicle for 18,000. Civic Center has nothing. Town Hall improvements, 15,000. Information technology, 50,000. Increase 44,000. Any questions on that?
So obviously, this was a big item. The department wish list was 1.2 million.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Um,
explanation on that would be nice.
So, I mean, again, I want to be supportive in maintaining our infrastructure because things age and we really need to keep up on certain things. And I think a majority of the requests from the department heads are legitimate requests. But again, in order to keep what we're proposing manageable and reasonable for your consideration and hopeful approval, we needed to make some cuts and some are deferred. Many will be looking for alternative funding sources. Again, we're blessed that we have American Rescue Plan money, but that's not going to last forever. So we try to be very judicious on that. And again, being a little more aggressive in seeking alternative funding sources through grants and state and federal aid. So many of these things will hopefully fit into those categories that we'll be able to keep up on our infrastructure without too many negative effects. But again, we can get into some specifics with American Rescue Plan. So I think we cut it as much as we can. And I think it's at least a good first base to keep us going.
Any questions to Mark and Kristen on this?
Any, department heads disagree with any of these and like really want to fight for them?
I'd welcome to, because I have to submit something if they
Right.
can, if
And
they.
that's what I'm saying. I know
if-
you have your part to do,
Right.
but I'd like to hear if there's a
Right,
department head that says, hey, this is really something that I'm really strong on. I'd like to hear from the department head if any of them have anything. So I'm just throwing it out there because I'd like to hear it if it's there. If not, then obviously the cuts will stand.
They're
So
welcome to,
I knew they would be.
not personal.
Right, not personal at all.
I'll be honest, Station 2 repairs, $50,000. I'd still like to go down to Bill and talk to Bill about his fire station down there, because I'll be honest, station. Well, we could still be talking,
At lunch, Bill
we can
said they were
prevent that,
talking
but
about apartments.
I
but-
know personally that Station 2 is not the best of conditions and.
I mean, my vision with public safety is to eventually get us a new headquarters somewhere. And with that, and the chief can disagree, I mean, he can give his spin. I'd like to see 2 and 3 merge somewhere central to get the best bang for a buck, because both those stations need certain things, whether it's multiple proper rest and restroom facilities, equipment size changes. I know we always have to order a smaller truck for Station 2 because it's all that will fit. So to get something a little more universal and safe and the modern amenities and safety equipment would be the ideal. And again, some of the infrastructure type money, and I think we just sent an email today on some station funding grants that maybe be some short-term fixes, but I don't want to keep saying forever that we're thinking about getting a public safety complex. I'd like to see it happen.
And to go along with that, I already had it in my head. I was gonna put it on the agenda once the budget's done, is to possibly form a committee to start looking into, I mean, I know you've looked around, the chiefs have looked around, but it's ad hoc the way everything's being done. A bunch of us talked about it. We said, let's get a committee going. Maybe find a spot in town that's good. Somebody who's good at writing grants and knows how to research grants. Have a committee together to do it, because that police department, a lot of these fire departments, like you said, it needs to be done sooner rather than later. Should have been done years ago.
And in conversations with Kristen, just I think we decided that perhaps 2 years away, we'll have some more significant bonds falling off. But like I mentioned, she's conservative, so that obviously we probably wouldn't be able to get grants for an entire purchase, but like I mentioned, we might be able to purchase some land now and
But to have a
go through the
committee
planning
get a lot of the
process.
legwork done before that money falls off and have everything ready to go, to me is, rather get ahead of it. So I'm gonna put it out there to the council later on, but I'll throw it out there tonight as something that it'll be on the agenda after the budgets.
So briefly, yeah, the 50,000 wasn't going to be enough to, originally I thought members would be able to do the work but it's not going to be enough to take care of everything. But, it is building towards having enough money to be able to do something. We did get an email this afternoon from Senator Reed that he is supporting the bill. Within the bill, it says that like 47% of the fire stations throughout the country are more than 40 years old. Well, our newest station is 50 years old. So, we, would fit within that category. So it's definitely something that I think is going to be worth our while to look at and hopefully have a successful submission.
I think the nicest fire stations I've seen in the States I've been to is San Diego.
Never been there. But
Oh, it's
And,
definitely.
and my concern with the location of the Harris Fire Station is it's right on the town line. Although the station is more cramped and it's definitely, it's more centered within their district. And when we look at that, if you're running from the edge of town in,
Isn't that other one actually in?
yeah, so it's right on the line, that's semantic, like,
It
it's.
was interesting because at one time when I did bring it before the council, years ago, I'm like, Jay, you were here, weren't you? Because we had money, we wanted to buy a couple of different things, but we had no money at the time. And we looked at that as probably because it was gonna go up for auction, public auction, basically. With that being said, everybody said no, and then Bill's was actually gonna move into that building. And I said, oh, great job, we're gonna knock down Bill's and it's gonna be a parking lot. And everything's gonna move half into Coventry, half into West Warwick, so I'm gonna see half the taxes. So if the kitchen side and all that is on the other side, they're getting the tangible, they're getting the tangibles, and we'll get the liquor tax, right? But it was kind of interesting, but that is good. That's half and half.
The bars on our side.
As long as the bar's on our side.
Yeah.
But, it's still an option, but I know I throw it out there, but I actually say it to Demetria too, every time I see her, I'm like, is it still up for sale? She goes, money talks, but.
Well, I didn't hear any actual pushback on that, so I guess.
Oh, you didn't hit, Mark threatened them all before coming here, and he said, if anybody talks back, you're gonna have to deal with me tomorrow. I get somewhere. Okay, we'll go back to general government.
So obviously the big drop is the pension. In that pension line now is the difference between the library, what their annual required contribution is, minus the 50,000 that's in their budget. So that's the 170,000. I'd originally put 500,000 in there as a possible additional contribution at the end of the year to make sure that we're doing our due diligence and making sure we're getting as close. Now that we're basing it on salaries, it's a whole different calculation. It's not, this lump sum that's given to us that we have to pay. So, in all the analysis I did, where it's a little less than what we would have been paying for the ARC. So we want to make sure that we have our bases covered and that we're not, underfunding in any way. We'll be 100% funded as far as retirement is considered, employees' retirement system, but for our personal, we did shave that down by 250 in the manager's budget. The dental and the health insurance for retirees, I had to get very precise since we're going to be premium based now. And obviously we had, I think out of the 13 early retirees, 10 were for in the general government side. So kind of offset the decrease that we would have seen in the working rate because we had, so many people come on. And then the workers' compensation, I was a little kind of rolling the dice there a little bit because I know our experience mod came down to below critical status. And our salary base hasn't changed that much for this next year. So I'm hoping that increase will come in right around that range. And the same thing with the general liability. I based the increase on the actual premium, not on what I budgeted last year.
And that workers' comp premium is paid in full.
We pay it, yes, right now?
Yes.
Yes, we did actually get, I know the school mentioned they got a bill after they did the audit. We got one too as well. It was like $97,000, but after I whittled through it, I got them down to 56.
Okay.
The other stuff is pretty much staying the same. Yep, everything else is pretty much staying the same, except for Patuxent River Authority is asking for 7,000 rather than 6.
Will be on the next agenda also because they asked for 7,000 last year, but somehow or other, none of us got that documentation. So,
Yeah, I believe I had a letter that said 6 because we did bump them up. We went from 5 to 6.
yeah, but this
So-
They asked for 7, but it was after we had prepared
Okay.
the budget.
I don't recall getting the letter. This year
Yeah,
I got the
I-
letter.
No,
I don't, yeah.
And I think they came after the budget requesting 7, but.
And that's all across the, whatever communities, we all have to be in the same salary. So if, they have to have the same amount. I do have one question on consulting.
Mhm.
We were adopted last year for 40,
Mhm.
$14,000 increase. from Previous highest, we were only spent 7. That's something we cut down on, or is that something that you anticipate?
I wouldn't recommend cutting down because I think with moving towards seeking a lot of grants, we're going to need the legwork done in order to have the information to apply for the grants. The studies, fortunately, I think there are some grant opportunities for some of those original engineering and consulting costs, and you can build some of those in. But I think we need to maintain something, a resource for us to do that ourselves. I know that we're talking about the Civic Center parking lot. The school department has offered to pay for the engineering and consulting fees for that project because we're mostly committed to actually paying for the pavement. So that one project would erase that a couple times over. So I think it's important to keep somewhat.
Anybody happen to remember, just out of curiosity, why 2022 is so high for that line item? If not, again, it's a random question that
I can look. We may have had some use for a consultant that was the best home for it.
Any other questions on general government? Thank you. Capital, we already did. Town sergeant, so he's not here to present, so we're gonna cut it.
He's protesting. He wants- Yeah, he asked for chairs. That's what.
Do
he
we need to
wanted.
go over town
I don't think
sergeant?
he wanted the chair.
I would,
All right, town clerk,
So this budget, for the town clerk's department, pretty much level funded. Obviously, the contractual salary increases and benefits. I don't really have any control over, but other than that, I've kept everything the same.
Think you can work it in that budget?
I think so. I mean, there's a couple of places where I'm over, but there's other places where I'm under just due to the fluctuation of staffing at the beginning of the year. I had lost someone in that position, so other people had to pick up. So it all, bottom line, it all worked out.
It balanced.
Pretty much the same for the Board of Canvassers. We're hoping that 2020 fiscal year 2024 is
Hey,
an
you
off.
changed on us. Do you have any
Just
questions
said-
on town clerk first?
Oh, I'm sorry.
You in a
I
hurry?
thought I asked.
Oh, he
You
did.
got one?
She did ask.
Oh, I didn't.
Yeah.
She did ask.
Okay,
You have
all right, Board of
questions?
Canvassers. Oh, you guys went rough easy. All right, Board of Canvassers.
That's because I'm not asking for anything. Board of Canvassers, pretty much is the same fiscal year 2024. It's pretty much an off election year. The only elections that I expect to come up are the PPP during that time and our budget referendum. So I think $20,000, reducing our election expenses to $20,000 will cover those. Oh, and I'm sorry, the other thing that I did modify was the board payroll. I am asking for a slight increase, but overall it won't be an increase. If you look for the trend, the last 3+ years, that line item at 3,500 has been over budget annually. That's due to the need for multiple meetings, and we pay per meeting currently. I am going to propose that we move our board to stipend base. So the 4,250 would cover that. So that would stay that amount. It would never go over again.
That's a question. You see any issues now with legal going up? It might not be a line item, all right, but we had Ray Lambert there and kind of was able to give advice as an attorney. Now, do you see Board of Canvassers increasing because that is the case?
In my tenure here, in the 2 years that I've been here, I don't think that we've relied on the legal department at all. And I don't think that Ray needed to use his knowledge as an attorney in that position the last couple of years. I can't say that it won't happen in the future. I mean, but I think that we'll be okay.
I just know during election years, he asked for advice, and I know Ray was able to give some of that advice on election year, especially if somebody's sitting here testing a candidate or whatever. With Ray's expertise, he was able to do that. But now if the board says, well, I can't answer that, we need to get an attorney involved or whatever. This year, again, not an election year, so it's probably not going to be an issue. Probably something you might want to look at next year. But I'm not looking at 100,000. I'm saying maybe 2,000 or something like that. So
5 minutes of work.
it'll depend.
I don't anticipate, I mean, I can't predict the future, but I don't really anticipate much of a change in the need. I think that although Ray's knowledge was definitely valued, I think when it came to representing the board, I don't think he, obviously was able to because it would have been a conflict of interest
but
anyway.
he was able to give
So
some-
I think he would have had to consult our attorney, or the board would have had to consult our attorney.
Because whereas and is as and was as and as is all different terms.
And I'm also not familiar with our current agreement with our solicitor, but I'm guessing that some of that falls under his regular contract anyway, where it wouldn't be an additional expense. Okay, so any questions on Board of Canvassers or any of the amount?
Probate.
She asked a question. You good?
I'm good. Yeah, so everybody shook no.
Probate again is completely level funded minus the contractual obligations for salaries. I didn't add anything else.
Any questions for Sal? I'm getting hungry, angry.
I just wanted to revisit that general government on the consulting. That was Nyhart. All the Nyhart bills that ran out because we transferred and we have about 30,000. I'm questioning their detail on the invoices, and until they get them back to me correct, I haven't paid them yet. That was
That was
last year
20.
and this year.
Thank you.
Town council. Level funded. Even know how to run a budget.
Bert's usually trying to give us a raise.
He does every year and, but. Any questions on town council? And yes, way back when, we did get medical, dental, and life.
Gave it all up with a great salary that we received.
Oh, no, they used to get the salary too, of 10, double. So they made cuts when times were rough. I think it was in the 90s. Well, I'll tell you, in 94, I bought my house and I got a supplemental tax. First year at 19 years old, I was confused. All right, legal. What page is that?
Just a few notes. Under the insurance claims there, that has been increased to account for the annual settlement that we had in the matter that we resolved this year. So that includes that payment. The labor specialist was increased back up because this, starting in December, we'll start negotiating with the 3 labor unions. And then planning and zoning was a slight increase to the hourly rate of our planning and zoning. So it's
That was based upon the request. I think I sent the council the entire the email. Anybody have questions about that? All right.
Just, if that one line for the insurance claims, it says under 3,000, how can we put that in there and not like create a different line for it?
I can create a different line if you want to.
Probably a good idea because that will go away.
Yep.
We pay it off. So yes, I agree. Yep.
It's confusing there to see that huge jump, and it makes sense in the explanation, but
Yeah.
yeah, just create a new line for that. It's better. Hopefully we don't have to add to that line at all.
Update from town manager on opera funds. Opera.
It said opera all night,
So-
but we're going along with it.
Thank you.
I'll do this in the speed round. Since I had sent this out a short time ago. There, right now, there's just under $4.4 million remaining available that has not been allocated and spent for the large variety of projects that we've had. I know we met a while back, or it was on an agenda item that we just kind of talked about the priorities where we stood, but it's been a while since we've done that. And obviously there are some projects coming up that we anticipate requesting ARPA funds. So I want to just kind of make sure our joint priorities align. If there's certain things that have changed, you want to go in a different direction, eliminate stuff, add things. Because I think 4.369 million can go very fast, especially since there are some big ticket items that we still have on the block. Just to kind of quickly go through some, the Civic Center parking lot was something we were interested in doing. I think that one, and these are just rough numbers, hopefully we'll be putting out an RFP or Kent Townsend retires, or he'll have it drafted and ready to go as he walks out the door, is probably somewhere in the area of $500,000. River Point Park paving, that one was guesstimated at 265,000, but we have submitted a congressional grant request for that with 2 of our federal legislators. We won't hear about that probably until the fall. However, that's something that anyone that drives around that circle knows needs to be done. But if we can get a grant for that, the grant submission, just by the way, was a little more inclusive than the paving. The first one we did through a senator's office was strictly the paving. But then with some assistance of a grant writer, we updated the submission to one of the congressmen that included some exercise stations around the perimeter of the road. I don't know if you've seen them on some shows, but they have outdoor workout stations. So we're looking at 6 to 7 of those for people that would walk the circle or, do this inner circle and do the river walk where we have different exercise facilities. Outdoor public Wi-Fi, since that's kind of a hot topic around the state and the nation for those that need it.
Does the grant cover all of that? Or is there a match to it? Or?
Everything pretty much comes with a match, but a lot of it can be in-kind work. So I think with the amount of stuff we have going on there and our maintenance, I think that we can blend a lot of that in with in-kind. Another big portion was it included lights for the soccer field. But what I didn't put in because of the cost, and we haven't engaged a proper study yet, is looking on what we can truly do for the soccer fields. In my mind, I'd like to find out the way, we have to obviously engage DEM and FEMA to figure out how to properly cap it with it being settled properly, because if you put a light pole in to what's there, I just picture it flopping over. But I'd like to see that, with proper drainage and avoid putting irrigation in there and use however you call it, the turf for those type of fields that can be, done, with soccer lines. If we put lights there, then that could be a backup football area in certain sections, or lacrosse, or how, depending on the seasons. I'm not quite sure how that all works, but that's a separate thing.
But Mark, going back to the public Wi-Fi, I know a lot of communities are leaving it to the ISPs, internet service providers, per se, Newport, for instance. But I just want to point out, like Newport has it down in their Dame Street area, in their park. Obviously, it's a highly trafficked park, and especially in the spring, summer, and fall. Just remember when you do this, or if you're looking at public Wi-Fi, I think leaving it to the ISPs, whether it's Verizon, Cox, whoever's out, right, that you also draw people there because it's free internet. Now, I know the library has internet. I know a lot of places already supply that internet. Just remember, wherever you supply it, whether it's the gazebo, and that's what most towns are focusing on, is highly trafficked park areas and whatever. Just remember, if it's free and people can get free internet, you're going to flock to those areas. So while you're looking at that, I just want to point out, we have some areas that are problem areas due to flocking and so you might just want to look at that. But, I mean, I think most, yeah, well, I think most cities and towns that are looking at that are leaving that to the ISPs and get quoted prices, because let's face it, if we the town install free internet to somebody, now we have problems with APs going down or whatever, who are we contacting? Are we contacting our IT people that are charging us $165 an hour to repair something? Or, who do you go to is the question, right? So that's stuff you want to look at, that is, definitely something that could be very costly.
The next one, which we don't have prices yet, which hopefully will go out in an RFP when we do the Civic Center parking lot, is what I'll refer to as the Civic Center Plaza upgrades to lighting and concrete and whatever else aesthetically pleasing to supplement the work that'll be done in the center oval. Don't have pricing on that. Another item we talked about earlier, no money involved, but I wanted to eventually talk, if there's money available, do we want to put it towards any type of land purchase, whether it's for open space, whether it's for potential public safety complex or anything like that. Next one is this year's paving project. We have a short list that we've come up with on the priority ones that we want. We'll put an RFP out for that to kind of get an ballpark idea on what those will cost, and we can, flex that list. But I anticipate using some residual money that's been left over from previous road bonds and some ward funds, since every ward has something included in the list, and then supplement that with ARPA funds for our paving project or projects this year.
And I know previous road bonds, I mean, put another road bond out, we should be getting rid of previous, there's a balance that, like you said, Ward 1,
Right,
2,
there's
3,
small
4.
money, so what I envision is, and why we tried to make sure there was something for every ward, is we like to pool that money together. First, Kristen doesn't have to maintain her multiple spreadsheets, for which in some wards is, 20,000, and in other wards, a little more than 100.
But some of us have that little dead end that's gonna take 20,000. So
Right,
why
so
don't we just get a
we-
tally of
we-
what each ward has and then come up with our own? We just said all wards have something.
Everybody has a little
Well,
bit
they
of
didn't spend
something.
it
It's
all,
not a
so-
lot, but it's
It's
it's not necessarily road bond. It's might be something else from something in the
Infrastructure,
past.
From
In the
that
past, sometimes we gave us
2015.
$50,000 to each ward.
I thought I exhausted all mine.
But I'd like to kind of pull that all together and just get these done. Obviously, the ice chiller is a major expense. We've kind of talked about different options there, whether that's something that would be a loan, a lease, a purchase, a combination of all of it. We can discuss that one when we get there. We have a co-pay for our DEM grant for the Crompton Playground, which is a 20% match, so that potentially could be up to 100,000, but I think we'll take away most of that with some in-kind services. That'll happen. And the last one will be whatever we want to contribute from American Rescue Plan towards the ladder truck. Once the chief figures out which truck he wants, the price, how much can come from his vehicle replacement fund versus lease versus some money to try to keep the lease manageable. So that's just a quick update on American Rescue Plan.
Can we add something? Not specific, but when the sewer department came up here tonight and they're looking for additional money for right now. Just all I'm thinking is, all right, what if something happens and right, we spend another $1 million on the sewer? They're gonna need to recap that $1 million. So that one-time $40 fee, 3 years, another one-time $5. So, and you're talking, I mean, it seems like they have a capital improvement plan going forward. I don't know if that's something that we could chip away at what we have here, because you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars into, I think one of my stores goes to so I don't know if,
Right, so
I just want to
when-
add it to the list.
When
because-
ARPA first came out, sewer improvements was one of the big 5 things that they were pushing. When they came out with that ruling that if you got under $10 million, you could essentially spend it on anything that a government would normally spend it on, with the exception of the 4 or 5 exceptions, one of which is just sticking and transferring it into a general fund. So we can't do that, but one of the original ideas was the Maisie Quinn Interceptor, which is estimated to be 1.7 million, would be one of the big ticket items for American Rescue Plan Fund. That again was a submission through a congressional grant that went out a couple weeks ago. Hopefully, we'll find out that we'll get that, so that what in our minds was a $1.7 million dedication can come back to other priorities. And again, as we kind of identify things, if wastewater needs something, we have that opportunity. I'm trying my best to try to accommodate maybe all the departments with something that
Right.
that they have a need. So
So going forward with the sewer though, is because it's a regional plant, and not all other sewer companies. are.
That's the other issue is anyone else want to contribute?
Well, I think at that point, I mean, I don't think it's a request. I mean, if there's something has to be done, it's a discussion with the partnering communities who I know don't attend the sewer subcommittees, not all of them.
None of them do anymore.
All right, so none of them do.
Well, there
So-
are no sewer subcommittee meetings anyway, but yes,
But-
yes.
But the meeting,
Yeah.
so, I mean, we're in charge of that as a sewer commission. I mean, it's nice to keep everybody informed. If they don't want to be informed, that's up to them. But if something's gonna need to be fixed and it's $500,000, just because it's on West Warwick property, it doesn't mean, we all know everybody else uses it.
Right, which is
So-
why one of the reasons we didn't
Yeah.
propose using American Rescue Plan for that, because we, use $500,000
But
of our
every
money.
city in town gets rescue plan money, so while they
but-
have that money,
We can ask.
well, yeah, I just don't want to lose sight of it, because if people still have the money, I mean, it is a necessity. I mean, it's not something that you have to do it. And they have to use the sewage, you can't cut them off.
Unfortunately, I think many communities, and I don't know about the ones that have used some of their ARPA funds to actually balance their budgets. So operationally, which will cause a problem down the road because it goes away.
Right.
But
It's good for the moment.
yes, exactly right. So if you were to talk to Jim Jeremiah, he's actually said to me, Mary Beth, all $7 million of ARPA should come right to the sewer plant. Because we have that much of a problem in our infrastructure. Obviously, I kind of said, no, we're gonna do parks. Well,
it's-
yeah, great, kids can play in the parks, but what if they can't flush their
Well,
toilet? I
and
said,
that's the thing.
yes.
I'm
So
looking at
that's not
necessity.
something, and there's no question about that, which is why, and I did have an opportunity, there was an event at the high school and Senator Reed was here. I did happen to mention once again that we have put in a request for 1.7 or $1.8 million. And he said, well, I'll make sure we look at that. So I'm coming, it seems as though people are looking to help us. They might say that in all 39 cities and towns they go to. I don't know.
The one thing I think that benefits us with that application is if it's considered and approved, it benefits multiple communities.
Correct.
So it wouldn't just be like we did something for West Warwick. It's a regional
Right.
plant, so you could take pictures and
They should be aware of that,
community,
too,
4 or 5
aware
communities, so.
that we did this, we wrote the grant, we accepted the grant, we did the work.
And part of the grant, part of the application was to make sure that the senator's office knew that it was a regional,
Right.
it does impact, other communities.
So
So
Warwick
hopefully ups
wastewater
the,
gave us a letter of support.
right.
The West Warwick Coventry State Legislator gave us a letter of support, so they're aware of it.
Any other questions for Mark? Hearing none. Any other comments from the council? I'm sorry.
I just want to ask Kristen to once again explain the pages 34 through 39, because it was kind of mixed in with the fire department earlier, so it's separate, so people, if they're listening, they can say, all right, this is what it is. Just one last explanation, please. I'm sorry to put you on the
Yeah.
spot.
So it's the pension, the employer pension obligation per person is now budgeted per person, whereas before the majority of the ARC was put in general government because it wasn't based on a per person. It was a lump sum.
If somebody just looked at it, we'll get very.
So now
confused.
we have a specific percentage that is given to us from the state. It is applied to all the pensionable wages. And that is now in the personnel supplement under, which then flows into the departments.
And under benefits also, it's not just pension, it covers all the benefits such as medical.
Medical,
dental.
yep, benefits is longevity, medical, dental, payroll taxes, life insurance, pension.
Again, that was just, I just wanted to clarify outside of,
Mhm.
budget, so people could, I've had a couple phone calls
Just-
already on it, and just, I said, it's gonna be explained tonight.
Mhm.
with the
And
meeting, or,
Some
you
of the
know,
alarm is, I'm sure that the benefit line is larger than the salary
and
line.
That's a big problem.
And that is because that pension number is in there.
Right.
Yes.
But, well, it's a pension number, but all those.
All
other
those others,
things,
it's
medical
all-
was very expensive.
So it
and
moved from one line item all into the individuals.
Yeah.
So,
Want to put it out there so it's clear. Thank you.
Any other comments from the department heads?
They're still here.
Those chairs
I know,
aren't that
Colin, they
uncomfortable,
left
are
you, they
they?
left
Yeah.
you quick, huh? They just took off on you. All right, hearing none.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
See you in April.
It's gonna be a rough
Have a
week.
good
Yeah,
night.
actually, April 4th and 5th.
April 4th,
Third, fourth,
5.
and fifth, right?
Yeah, they got a council
More than
meeting the
fifth for
3rd.
budgets.
Yes.